I still remember the exact moment my life changed. It wasn't when I got married or when we bought our first house. No, it was on a perfectly ordinary Tuesday evening when my husband of 8 years looked down at the coq au vin I'd spent 3 hours preparing and said, "Maybe we should just order pizza." The silence that followed was deafening. "What's wrong with it?" I asked, my voice unnaturally calm as I stared at the dish I'd been perfecting for weeks. David shrugged, poking at a piece of chicken with his fork. "It's fine, Maya. Just a bit. Amateur. The sauce is separated and the chicken's dry." He offered what he probably thought was a sympathetic smile. "Not everyone can cook. It's no big deal. No big deal." As if I hadn't spent years teaching myself French cooking techniques. As if I hadn't converted our spare bedroom into a pantry for specialty ingredients. As if cooking wasn't the one thing that had kept me sane during the darkest period of my life. "You're right," I said, setting down my fork. "Let's order pizza." Later that night, after David had fallen asleep, I sat at our kitchen island staring at my collection of cookbooks. The marginal notes, the dog-eared pages, the sauce stains on my favorite recipes, physical evidence of my passion. Amateur? Perhaps, but not for lack of trying. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister, Layla. "How was the coq au vin? Did David love it?" I stared at the message, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Layla had been my taste tester for weeks as I perfected the recipe. He suggested pizza instead, I wrote back. Her response was immediate. "What?" That dish was restaurant quality, restaurant quality. The phrase echoed in my mind, triggering a memory from years ago, before I'd met David. I'd briefly considered culinary school after college, even toured a few campuses, but ultimately chose the practical path of corporate marketing. The next morning, I woke before David and made a phone call I'd been putting off for months. When he came downstairs, I was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a strangely peaceful feeling. "Morning," he mumbled, heading straight for the coffee maker. "No breakfast?" "Not today." He turned, finally noticing my expression. "Everything okay?" I quit my job. Coffee sloshed over the edge of his mug. "You what?" "I called Marcus this morning and resigned, effective immediately. I have 3 months of vacation saved up, so that's my notice period." David set his mug down carefully, as if handling explosives. "Maya, is this about last night? Look, I'm sorry about the chicken thing. I was tired and not thinking." "It's not about the chicken," I lied. "Not entirely. I've been unhappy at Meridian for a long time. You know that. But to quit without another job lined up, without even discussing it with me?" He ran a hand through his hair. "What's your plan exactly?" I took a deliberate sip of coffee. "I'm going to culinary school." "Culinary?" He stopped, staring at me like I'd announced plans to become an astronaut. "Maya, be serious. You're 34, not some college kid finding herself." "I've already been accepted to Auguste Culinary Institute. I applied 6 months ago, actually. Was waiting for the right time to tell you." His face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and finally settled on condescending concern. "Honey, cooking is a great hobby, but turning it into a career at your age? The restaurant industry is brutal. The hours, the physical demands, the low pay. I'm aware of the challenges. And the cost of culinary school versus the return on investment. I'm using my inheritance from Mom and Dad," I interrupted. "It's my money, David. My decision." He leaned back, studying me as if seeing me for the first time. "You've really thought this through?" "Yes." "All because I didn't like one chicken dish?" I met his gaze steadily. "No. Because when you dismissed my cooking as amateur, you dismissed years of passion and learning. And I realized I don't want to spend the rest of my life having my dreams treated as hobbies." David's reaction to my culinary school announcement was exactly what I expected. Initial shock, followed by patronizing support that thinly veiled his conviction that I'd fail. Over the next few weeks, he transitioned from, "Are you sure about this?" to, "Well, I guess you need to get it out of your system." Meanwhile, I methodically prepared for my new life. I organized my inheritance funds, researched housing near the August Culinary Institute, and most importantly, began practicing basic knife skills for hours each day. "You're really serious about this," Layla remarked, watching me execute a perfect brunoise on a carrot. We were in her kitchen, where I'd been spending more and more time as tension with David increased. More serious than I've been about anything in years. I gathered the precisely cut carrot pieces into a neat pile. I keep thinking about how alive I feel when I'm cooking. When did I stop prioritizing that feeling? "When you married David," she muttered, then quickly added, "Sorry, that wasn't fair." But it was fair, and we both knew it. I had gradually surrendered pieces of myself during my marriage, rationalizing each concession as part of being a supportive wife. David's career always took precedence. My cooking was a cute hobby. Our social life revolved around his colleagues and preferences. "Have you told him about your apartment yet?" Layla asked. I shook my head. "I'm waiting for the right moment." The right moment presented itself a week later, when David announced he'd been invited to speak at a marketing conference in Chicago. The same weekend, I was scheduled to move into my small studio apartment near Auguste. "That's perfect timing," I said, setting down the dinner plates. "I've found a place near the school. I can move in while you're away." His fork paused halfway to his mouth. "A place? What are you talking about?" "An apartment. For while I'm in culinary school. You're moving out?" His voice held genuine confusion, as if the concept had never occurred to him. The school is an hour commute from here, and with the demanding schedule, it makes more sense to be closer. I kept my tone practical, matter of fact. "It's just temporary." But we both recognized the lie. This wasn't temporary. This was the first step toward a separation we'd been silently building toward for months, possibly years. "I see." David set down his fork. "Were you planning to discuss this with me at any point?" "I'm discussing it now." "After you've already secured the apartment, made the decision unilaterally." His voice took on the same condescending tone he'd used when I announced culinary school. "Maya, this isn't how married people handle major life changes." "You're right," I agreed, surprising him. Married people should support each other's dreams. They should notice when their partner is deeply unhappy in their career. They should taste the love in a meal their spouse spent weeks perfecting, not suggest ordering pizza. Silence stretched between us, filled with years of unspoken disappointments. "Is this your way of asking for a divorce?" he finally asked. "No, it's my way of trying to find myself again." I looked at him directly. "But I can't guarantee who I'll be when I do." The day David left for Chicago, I moved into my new apartment with Layla's help. The studio was tiny but charming, with a surprisingly spacious kitchen featuring butcher block countertops and a professional-grade gas range. "Definitely meant for a chef," Layla approved, unpacking my beloved knife collection. "Have you told David the rent yet?" I grimaced. "No, he'd have a fit over the fiscal irresponsibility. But I'm using my inheritance, not our joint savings. It's not even that expensive for this neighborhood." Try explaining that to a man who calculates the cost per use of everything he buys. As we arranged my cookbooks on the small shelf above the desk, I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in years. This space was entirely mine. No necessity to compromise, no need to justify my kitchen equipment purchases, no requirement to cook practical, healthy meals instead of experimenting with complex techniques. That night, after Layla left, I prepared a simple meal of pasta aglio e olio, a dish that required perfect timing and technique despite its minimal ingredients. As I twirled the noodles on my fork, savoring the balance of garlic, chili, and olive oil, I realized I was eating alone, yet didn't feel lonely. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Arrived in Chicago. Is the apartment suitable? I considered. How to respond? Should I send a photo, describe the kitchen, mention the rent? In the end, I simply wrote, yes, it feels right. His reply came quickly. We should talk when I get back. Yes, we should. Culinary school began with an intensity I hadn't experienced since college. From the first day, Chef Laurent made it clear that August Culinary Institute accepted only the most dedicated students. You are here not to cook, he announced to our class of 20. You are here to become artists, scientists, historians, and craftspeople, all in one. If you seek merely to follow recipes, you may leave now. No one moved. I gripped my knife roll tighter, heart pounding with a mixture of terror and exhilaration. For the next 8 weeks, my life consisted entirely of knife skills, stock preparation, and the 5 mother sauces. I arrived at 5 a.m. to prep ingredients, spent 8 hours in practical training, then studied technique and theory until midnight. My hands developed calluses and burns. My feet ached constantly. I'd never been happier. You're different, David remarked during one of our increasingly rare dinners together. After returning from Chicago, he'd reluctantly accepted my separate apartment, but insisted on weekly meals to maintain our connection. How so? I asked, watching him pick at the sole meunière I'd prepared as part of my classical techniques. Homework. More confident. Less concerned with my approval. He set down his fork. It's like you've discovered you don't need me anymore. The observation startled me with its accuracy. It's not about needing you, David. It's about discovering that I'm capable of more than I realized. And where does that leave us? It was the question we'd been avoiding for weeks. Where did my transformation leave our marriage? I had no answer. That wouldn't hurt us both. I don't know, I admitted. I'm still figuring that out. He nodded slowly, then changed the subject to a work crisis, his default mode when emotions became too complicated. I let him, relieved to postpone the inevitable conversation. 2 months into my culinary education, Chef Laurent announced our first significant evaluation. Each student would prepare a signature dish that demonstrated both technical mastery and creative vision. This is your opportunity to show me who you are as a chef, he explained. Choose wisely. While my classmates debated elaborate presentations and exotic ingredients, I knew immediately what I would make: coq au vin. The same dish David had dismissed, but perfected through my new skills and understanding. I spent days testing variations, adjusting techniques, refining every element. The night before the evaluation, I called Layla in a panic. What if it's still amateur? What if I haven't improved at all? Maya, she said firmly, I've tasted your cooking before and after culinary school. You were always good, but now you're exceptional. Chef Laurent will see that. Evaluation day arrived with stomach churning, anxiety. As I prepared my mise en place, I noticed my hands were steady despite my nerves. Muscle memory and confidence had replaced uncertainty. When Chef Laurent reached my station, I presented my coq au vin with simple elegance. The deep mahogany sauce glossy and rich, the chicken tender but maintaining its integrity, the garnish of pearl onions and mushrooms arranged with precision. He tasted one bite, then another. His expression remained impassive. The story behind this dish? He asked, setting down his fork. It's a dish I've made many times, I explained. But now, I understand why my previous versions were flawed. I didn't respect the fundamental techniques, the proper development of flavor through browning, the importance of patience in reduction, the balance of acidity and richness. Chef Laurent nodded slowly. And what does this dish mean to you personally? Question caught me off guard. I could feel my classmates watching, waiting for my response. It represents transformation, I said finally. Taking something familiar and elevating it through understanding and care. Proving that even simple ingredients can create something extraordinary with the right technique. A hint of a smile touched his usually stern face. Indeed, and you have succeeded in that transformation. He made a note on his clipboard. Full marks, Ms. Winters. This is restaurant quality. There it was again, that phrase. Restaurant quality. The words that had sparked my journey months ago, now validated by one of the most respected culinary instructors in the country. That night, instead of calling Layla or David to share my success, I sat alone in my tiny apartment, savoring the moment privately. Full marks, restaurant quality, transformation. A plan began forming in my mind, tentative at first, then gathering momentum as I considered the possibilities. What if my culinary journey didn't end with graduating from Auguste? What if this was just the beginning? As culinary school progressed, the distance between David and me grew, not just physically, but emotionally. Our weekly dinners became monthly, then sporadic. Conversations focused on practicalities rather than connection. We were two people, orbiting different suns, our gravitational pull toward each other weakening with each passing day. 6 months into my program, Chef Laurent approached me after a particularly successful practical exam on regional French cuisine. Ms. Winters, do you have a moment? He gestured toward his office, an honor rarely extended to students. Inside, he offered me an espresso from his personal machine. I have been observing your progress with interest. Your technical skills were always promising, but now your creativity and intuition are emerging as well. Thank you, chef. I sipped the perfect espresso, wondering where this conversation was. Heading. I have a colleague, Jean-Michel Renard. Perhaps you've heard of him? My hand froze mid-sip. Jean-Michel Renard was a culinary legend, a French chef whose Chicago restaurant Maison had maintained 3 Michelin stars for over a decade. Of course I know of him, I managed to say. He is looking for a serious stagiaire, someone with potential worth his personal investment. Chef Laurent studied me over his tiny cup. I have recommended you. A stage. An unpaid apprenticeship. In a professional kitchen. At Maison was an opportunity beyond my wildest expectations. It typically took years of industry experience to earn such a position, especially with a chef of Renard's caliber. I don't know what to say. Say yes, of course. Chef Laurent set down his cup with precision. It will be difficult. Renard is demanding, his kitchen intimidating, but you have both the skill and the temperament to succeed there. When would it start? 3 weeks from now. You would need to relocate to Chicago. Chicago, where David frequently traveled for work, where he had once suggested we move for his career advancement, an idea I had resisted due to my established life and marketing position. The irony wasn't lost on me. That evening, I called David instead of texting, a rarity in our current communication pattern. Chicago? He repeated after. I explained the opportunity. That's unexpected. It's an incredible opportunity. Stagiaires from Maison often go on to head their own Michelin-starred restaurants. And how long would this unpaid position last? The practical question, always his first concern. 6 months, possibly extending to a year if Renard sees potential. For a permanent role. A year of unpaid work. His tone conveyed exactly what he thought of the financial wisdom of such a decision. Maya, I understand you're passionate about this cooking career, but at some point, practical considerations need to factor in. I have enough from my inheritance to cover living expenses, I replied, keeping my voice even despite the familiar frustration building. This is an investment in my future. Silence stretched between us, filled with unspoken questions about what exactly that future included and whether we would share it. I suppose it would be convenient, he finally said. I'm in Chicago at least once a month for clients. We could see each other more regularly than we do now. It was the closest thing to enthusiasm I could expect from David. A practical acknowledgement of logistical benefits. I'm going to accept the position, I said, making the decision final even as I spoke the words. I assumed you would. No judgment in his tone, just resignation. You haven't asked for my input on any decision since you started culinary school. The observation stung precisely because it was accurate. Would it have mattered if I had? Probably not, he admitted with unexpected honesty. We seem to want very different things now. After hanging up, I sat in my tiny kitchen, surrounded by the tools and ingredients that had become more familiar to me than my husband's embrace. The conversation had illuminated a truth I'd been avoiding. David and I weren't just physically separated. We had emotionally diverged beyond reconciliation. Yet neither of us had taken the step to formally end our marriage. It lingered in a state of quantum uncertainty, neither alive nor dead until observed directly. Moving to Chicago would force that observation, one way or another. I called Layla next, expecting her usual enthusiastic support. Instead, her response surprised me. Chicago is a big step, Maya. Are you sure this is about the culinary opportunity, and not about avoiding the decision about your marriage? That's not fair, I protested. This stage is the chance of a lifetime. I'm not saying don't take it. I'm saying be honest with yourself about all your motivations. Her voice softened. You and David are in limbo. At some point, you need to either recommit to each other or let go completely. I know, I admitted. Chicago will clarify things, one way or another. I know, I admitted. Chicago will clarify things, one way or another. Just make sure you're moving toward something, not away from something. Her words stayed with me as I prepared for the next phase of my journey, and possibly the final chapter of my marriage. Chicago welcomed me with biting winter winds and the buzzing energy of a city confident in its culinary prowess. I found a small studio apartment within walking distance of Maison, using the last significant portion of my inheritance for the security deposit and first month's rent. This is cozy, David commented during his first visit, surveying the 450 square feet that now contained my life. He had flown in specifically to help me settle, a gesture of support I hadn't expected. It's all I need, I replied, arranging my knives on the magnetic strip I'd installed above the tiny but efficient kitchen workspace. I'll barely be here anyway. Kitchen hours are brutal. David nodded, sitting carefully on the edge of the convertible sofa that served as both my seating and sleeping area. Maya, before you're consumed by this new position, we should talk about us, the conversation we'd been avoiding for months. I set down the Santoku knife I'd been polishing and faced him. Okay, I've been thinking a lot about what's happened between us, he began, his corporate strategist brain clearly having outlined this discussion in advance. We've been living separate lives for almost a year now. At some point, we need to decide if this is a temporary phase or a permanent change. What do you want it to be? I asked, genuinely curious. Our marriage had deteriorated so gradually that I wasn't sure either of us remembered what had drawn us together in the first place. He looked surprised by the question, as if he'd expected me to have a definitive answer ready. I don't know. I miss aspects of our life together. But I also recognize that you're becoming someone different from the woman I married. Is that bad? Not bad, just unfamiliar. He met my eyes directly. You're more assertive, more willing to take risks, less concerned with my approval or conventional wisdom. All qualities you'd admire in a business colleague, I observed. Yes, but in a wife. He stopped, hearing how the words sounded. That came out wrong. No, it came out honestly, I corrected. And it's exactly why we're in this position. You want a wife who prioritizes your career, who treats her own passions as secondary. I can't be that person anymore, David. I don't want to be. He absorbed this, nodding slowly. I understand. So where does that leave us? The question hung between us, heavy with the weight of 8 years shared and all the possible futures diverging from this moment. I think we need time apart, real separation, not this halfway state we've been in. The words felt right as I spoke them. I'm starting a demanding new chapter here. You're focused on your career advancement. Let's give ourselves 6 months of official separation, then reassess. David looked relieved, confirming my suspicion that he'd been wrestling with similar thoughts. That seems reasonable, practical. Yes, practical. I smiled at our mutual retreat to the familiar territory of logical planning. We've always been good at practical. Just not so good at passion, he added, surprising me with the insight. At least, not the same passions. After David left, I stood in my tiny kitchen, preparing a simple dinner of pasta with brown butter and sage, a dish that required technical precision despite its minimal ingredients. As I watched the butter solids darken to the perfect hazelnut color, I realized I felt lighter. The uncertainty that had shadowed me for months had been replaced by a clear path forward, regardless of where it ultimately led. My first day at Maison arrived with a mixture of terror and exhilaration. I reported at 5 a.m., knife roll clutched, in white-knuckled hands, prepared for the legendary intensity of a Michelin-starred kitchen. The reality exceeded even my anxious imagination. Chef Renard operated his kitchen with military precision and volcanic temperament. As a stagiaire, I occupied the lowest rung in a rigidly hierarchical system, assigned the most menial tasks while being expected to absorb everything happening around me. Faster, Winters, Renard barked as I painstakingly brunoised mirepoix for the day's stocks. This is not a cooking school exercise. This is a professional kitchen. I increased my speed, maintaining precision despite trembling hands. By the end of my 16-hour shift, every muscle ached. 3 small burns marked my forearms, and I'd never felt more alive. Days bled into weeks as I adjusted to the punishing schedule and exacting standards. I arrived first, left last, and volunteered for every undesirable task, scrubbing burnt pots, organizing the walk-in refrigerator, prepping mountains of vegetables. Gradually, I earned small nods of approval from the senior cooks, then increasingly complex assignments. 3 months into my stage, a pivotal moment arrived. The poissonnier called in sick minutes before service, leaving a critical station unmanned. As sous-chef Marchand frantically reassigned responsibilities, I stepped forward. I can handle fish. Station, I offered. Chef Laurent emphasized seafood techniques at Auguste. Marchand looked skeptical but desperate. Chef Renard will have my head if anything goes wrong. It won't. With that simple assertion, more confident than I actually felt, I was thrust into the heart of service at one of the country's most acclaimed restaurants. For the next 4 hours, I prepared delicate fillets of sole, perfectly seared scallops, and complex seafood sauces with a focus so intense that the rest of the kitchen seemed to fade away. When the final order left my station, I became aware of Chef Renard standing silently beside me, observing my plating of a Dover sole with brown butter sauce. Acceptable, he said quietly, the highest praise he typically offered. Report to my office tomorrow at 3. That night, I was too wired to sleep despite physical exhaustion. Had I overstepped? Was I being dismissed, promoted, reprimanded? Chef Renard's inscrutability made prediction impossible. The next afternoon, I presented myself at his office precisely at 3. Chef's whites impeccably clean despite the lunch service I'd just completed. Sit, he commanded, gesturing to the chair opposite his meticulously organized desk. You surprised me yesterday, Winters. Thank you, Chef. I perched nervously on the edge of the seat. I did not say it was a good surprise. His accent thickened. Slightly, as it did when he was particularly focused. You took a significant risk, claiming you could handle a station you had never worked in this kitchen. Yes, chef. It could have been disastrous. Yes, chef. He studied me with piercing intensity. Yet it was not. You performed competently, above average even. He leaned back slightly. I spoke with Laurent about you. He says you came to cooking. Late. That you left an established career? That's correct. Why? The question was abrupt, demanding. I considered giving the simple answer, that I'd always loved cooking and finally decided to pursue it professionally. But something told me Renard wanted the truth, not the polished version. My husband told me my cooking was amateur, I said plainly. After I'd spent years teaching myself techniques and developing my palate, it made me realize I'd been treating my true passion as secondary to his expectations. Culinary school was my way of reclaiming that passion. Renard's expression remained neutral, but something shifted in his eyes. And now? Are you here to prove something to this husband? The question struck uncomfortably close to a truth I hadn't fully acknowledged. Was I still motivated by David's dismissal? Was my determination fueled by the desire to prove him wrong? Initially, perhaps, I admitted. But now I'm here for myself. Because I've discovered this is what I was meant to do. He nodded once. Decision, apparently made. I am promoting you to commiss. You will continue to assist all stations, but with increased responsibility and a modest stipend. If you continue to progress, demi-chef de partie within 3 months. The promotion from unpaid stagiaire to paid commis typically took a year or more in a restaurant of Maison's caliber. I struggled to maintain professional composure as the significance registered. Thank you, chef. I won't disappoint you. See that you do not. He returned his attention to the papers on his desk. Dismissal clear. 6 a.m. tomorrow. We will begin training you on the garde-manger techniques specific to Maison. That night, I celebrated alone in my tiny apartment, preparing the most technically perfect omelet I could muster, a chef's benchmark dish that revealed fundamental technique. As I plated it with a sprinkle of Fine's herbs, my phone buzzed with a text from David. In Chicago next Tuesday for client meetings. Dinner? I stared at the message, suddenly realizing I hadn't spoken to my husband in nearly a month. Our official separation had evolved into minimal contact, both of us absorbed. In our respective careers, did I want to see him? Did I have anything to say? Just got promoted at Maison, I replied. From stagiaire to commis, paid position with more responsibility. His response came quickly. Congratulations. That's impressive. The words were supportive, but I found myself searching for a hint of the condescension that had characterized his early reactions to my culinary pursuits. Had he finally accepted this wasn't a phase? Or had we simply grown too distant for his opinion to register the emotional impact it once had? Tuesday works, I texted back. Make a reservation somewhere. My schedule is unpredictable, but I should be free by 9. By 9. Only after sending the message did I realize I'd placed the burden of planning on David, something I would never have done in the earlier years of our marriage, when I'd carefully managed all our social arrangements to accommodate his preferences. Will I? Do, he replied. Looking forward to it. I returned to my cooling omelet, wondering what this dinner would reveal about the state of our marriage and whether either of us truly cared about the answer. David chose Alinea for our dinner, Chicago's most acclaimed restaurant, with 3 Michelin stars and a months-long waiting list. That he'd secured a last-minute reservation impressed even my restaurant industry-calibrated standards. I had to call in a significant favor from a client, he admitted when I commented on it. But I thought you'd appreciate experiencing the competition. I nearly laughed at his corporate framing of the culinary world. Alinea isn't Maison's competition, David. They're completely different approaches to dining. It would be like comparing a poet to a novelist. We were seated at an immaculate table in the minimalist dining room. David looked good, more relaxed than I remembered. His usual corporate stiffness softened somehow. "You look different," I observed as we surveyed the tasting menu. "New trainer," he replied with a small smile. "Apparently sitting at a desk 14 hours a day isn't optimal for health, but you're the one who's transformed." I touched my hair self-consciously. I'd cut it short for practicality in the kitchen, and my once manicured hands now carried calluses and small burn scars like badges of honor. "Kitchen life changes you," I acknowledged, physically and otherwise. The conversation paused as our server explained the first course, an elaborate presentation involving flavored smoke and edible balloons filled with helium and fruit essences. David watched my reaction with genuine interest as I analyzed the techniques and flavor combinations. "You really do love this," he said when the server departed. "I can see it when you talk about food. Your whole being lights up." "I do." I met his gaze directly. "It's the first time in my adult life I've felt completely aligned with my purpose." He nodded slowly. "I owe you an apology, Maya." "For what specifically?" The question wasn't meant to be harsh, but there were so many potential areas requiring apology that clarification seemed necessary. "For dismissing your passion as a hobby. For not seeing how important cooking was to you." He rotated his water glass precisely, a nervous habit I recognized from our early dating days. "And yes, for criticizing your coq au vin, which was actually quite good, by the way." I raised an eyebrow. "You didn't eat more than 2 bites." I was being an ass. He looked genuinely contrite. "I'd had a frustrating day at work and took it out on your dinner. It wasn't about the food at all." The admission was unexpected. David rarely acknowledged fault so directly. Our separation seemed to have prompted a level of self-reflection I hadn't anticipated. "Thank you for saying that," I said finally. "It means something, even now." The next course arrived. A deconstructed Caesar salad involving flash-frozen dressing and anchovy foam. As we navigated the elaborate presentation, David asked insightful questions about my work at Maison, showing more genuine interest in my culinary career than he had during our entire marriage. "Chef Renard says I could be a sous chef within 2 years if I continue progressing," I explained. "It's an accelerated timeline, almost unheard of for someone who started cooking professionally in their 30s. "That's remarkable, Maya. Truly." His pride seemed sincere. "And after that? What's your ultimate goal?" The question was reasonable, but caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on surviving each day at Maison that I hadn't articulated a long-term vision, even to myself. "I'm not entirely sure," I admitted. "I love the creativity and precision of fine dining, but the lifestyle is punishing. 60-hour weeks minimum, working holidays, physical toll. Not conducive to family life," David observed carefully. "No," I agreed, the unspoken question hanging between us. We had occasionally discussed children early in our marriage, but both had prioritized career establishment first. Now, at 35, the biological clock was becoming a consideration I couldn't ignore. "And us?" he asked finally, setting down his fork. "Where do we stand, Maya?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. "We've been living separate lives for almost a year. We're different people now than when we married." Different doesn't necessarily mean incompatible. No, but it requires re-establishing compatibility, getting to know each other again. I studied him across the table. "Are you interested in doing that work, David? Or are you just reluctant to accept failure?" He considered the question with unusual thoughtfulness. "Both, perhaps. I miss you, but I also recognize that we're at a crossroads. Whatever comes next would be a new relationship, not a continuation of the old one." "That's surprisingly insightful." He smiled ruefully. "I've been seeing a therapist. Apparently, I had some issues with control and validation that affected how I treated you." among other revelations. I nearly choked on my wine. David, pragmatic, emotions are inefficient. David, in therapy? The surprise must have shown on my face. Is it really so shocking that I'd try to understand what went wrong between us? He asked. Frankly, yes. I set down my glass. The David I married believed therapy was for people too weak to solve their own problems. Like I said, I've changed. Too. His expression grew serious. Not because I expect it will win you back, but because losing you forced me to examine patterns I'd never questioned. Our dinner at Alinea continued through 12 exquisite courses, each more technically impressive than the last. Throughout the meal, David and I navigated a conversation unlike any we'd had in years. Honest, vulnerable, occasionally uncomfortable, but undeniably real. By the time the elaborate dessert presentation concluded, involving chocolate spheres melting under warm caramel sauce poured from decorative vessels, I found myself genuinely enjoying his company in a way I hadn't since our early dating days. This has been nice, I admitted as we waited for the check. I wasn't sure what to expect tonight. Neither was I. David hesitated. Would you consider doing it again, when I'm next in Chicago? I considered declining, maintaining the clean separation we'd established. But something had shifted during our dinner. Not reconciliation exactly, but perhaps the beginning of a new understanding. I'd like that, I said finally. But let's be clear about expectations. I'm not ready to make any decisions about our marriage. Understood. He nodded, then added with surprising humor. Consider it professional networking. I know a promising chef whose career I'm following with interest. I laughed, appreciating his attempt to lighten the moment. In that case, I accept. Though next time, let's try somewhere more in my actual budget range. My treat, he insisted, handling the substantial check without his usual calculation of cost-value ratio. Consider it an investment in your culinary education. We parted ways outside the restaurant with an awkward moment of hesitation before settling on a brief hug. As I watched his taxi pull away, I realized I felt none of the emotional turbulence I had anticipated. Neither regret nor longing nor anger, just a calm acknowledgement that we were both evolving, separately, but perhaps not as adversarially as before. Back at Maison, my promotion to Comus accelerated my education exponentially. Now paid a modest salary, I graduated from purely preparatory tasks to actual cooking under the fierce supervision of station chefs. Every day brought new techniques, new challenges, and increasingly direct interaction with Chef Renard himself. "Again, Winters," he would command, watching me pipe delicate quenelles of mousse. "More consistent shape. A Michelin star is not gained through mediocrity." I would wipe my piping bag clean and start again, determined to achieve the perfect oval shape he demanded. Under his exacting standards, I developed a precision and consistency I hadn't known I was capable of. 6 months into my time at Maison, Chef Renard called me into his office again. My stomach clenched with familiar anxiety, though I couldn't think of any recent mistakes serious enough to warrant disciplinary action. "Sit," he instructed, exactly as he had during our first private meeting. I perched on the chair, back straight, hands folded in my lap. "You have progressed adequately," he began, his version of high praise. "The time has come to test your creative capabilities, not merely your technical execution." I waited, heart pounding with anticipation. "Next Tuesday, you will prepare a special amuse-bouche for the chef's table. Your creation, your execution. It must reflect Maison's philosophy while demonstrating your personal perspective." He fixed me with his penetrating gaze. "Are you capable of this challenge?" "Yes, chef," I responded immediately, mind already racing with possibilities. "One bite, perfect balance, technical precision. You have 6 days to develop and test your concept." He returned his attention to his computer screen. "Dismissed." I floated through the remainder of my shift, excitement temporarily overriding the physical exhaustion that had become my constant companion. A creative opportunity. My first chance to develop a dish that might actually be served to maisons, discriminating guests. It was a significant vote of confidence from a chef known for keeping new cooks on repetitive tasks for years before allowing creative input. That night, I transformed my tiny apartment into a test kitchen, scribbling ideas. In my notebook and sketching plating concepts, the amuse-bouche, literally mouth amuser, was a single perfect bite meant to stimulate the palate and introduce the chef's philosophy. It needed to be technically flawless, visually striking, and conceptually interesting. After initial brainstorming, I settled on 3 potential directions and methodically began testing components. For the next 5 days, every moment outside of my maison shifts was devoted to refinement. Adjusting seasoning by minute increments, testing different temperatures and textures, plating and replating until each element was perfectly positioned. By Monday evening, I had settled on my final concept, a modernist reinterpretation of coq au vin, compressed into a single perfect bite. A crisp chicken skin tuile formed a delicate base, topped with a sphere of chicken mousse containing a liquid, center of red wine reduction, garnished with a brunoise of glazed vegetables and a micro-herb representing the traditional bouquet garni. I practiced the complete execution 20 times, ensuring I could plate it efficiently during service. Each component required precise timing and handling, with no room for error. When Tuesday arrived, I reported to Maison 2 hours earlier than my scheduled shift, carrying a small container of components I'd prepared in my apartment. Chef Marchand, the sous chef, raised an eyebrow but granted me access to the assigned prep area. Chef Renard does not tolerate failure in special assignments, he warned. Be certain you are prepared. I am, I assured him with more confidence than I felt. The chef's table was booked for a party of 6, representatives from a major restaurant group known for backing innovative culinary concepts. High-profile industry guests meant even more scrutiny of every detail leaving the kitchen. As service approached, Chef Renard inspected my station with characteristic intensity. "Explain," he commanded, gesturing to my mise en place. I detailed each component and the precise assembly sequence, then plated a complete example for his evaluation. The entire kitchen seemed to hold its breath as he examined my creation, turning the plate to view it from multiple angles before finally taking a bite. His expression remained impassive as he tasted, chewed, and considered. After what felt like an eternity, he gave a single short nod. "Acceptable. Proceed." The service unfolded with Maison's usual military precision. At exactly 7:42 p.m., the order came in for the chef's table amuse-bouche. With steady hands and laser focus, I assembled 6 perfect plates, each identical to the sample Chef Renard had approved. "Chef's table," I announced, placing them in the pass. Chef Renard inspected each one methodically before nodding to the servers. As my creation left the kitchen, I exhaled slowly, returning immediately to my regular station duties. In a Michelin-starred kitchen, there was no time to dwell on either success or failure. 2 hours later, as service wound down, Chef Marchand approached my station. "Chef's table has requested to meet you," he informed me, expression neutral. "Chef Renard has approved." I wiped my hands on my towel, heart pounding. Meeting guests was rare for someone of my junior position, either a very good or very bad sign. As I approached the chef's table, a distinguished-looking woman in her 60s rose slightly. "Are you the creator of our amuse-bouche?" she asked. "Yes, Madame." I maintained the professional composure Maison demanded. "Brilliant concept," she declared. "The technical execution of that wine reduction sphere, perfect temperature to maintain integrity until ruptured by the diner, and the flavor profile, a complete coq au vin experience in a single bite." "Thank you, madam." "I'm Victoria Langley," she continued. "These are my colleagues from Apex Restaurant Group. We're always seeking innovative culinary talent. I recognized the name immediately. Apex was renowned for identifying and backing up-and-coming chefs, providing both financial support and operational expertise for new restaurant concepts. It's an honor to meet you, I replied truthfully. How long have you been at Maison? She inquired. 6 months as commis, madame. 3 months as stagiaire before that. Her eyebrows rose. Remarkably fast. Progression. Previous culinary experience? Auguste Culinary Institute before Maison. But cooking is my second career. I was in marketing until 2 years ago. She exchanged glances with her colleagues. Bold transition. What prompted the change? I hesitated, conscious of the professional setting and my representation of Maison. I realized my true passion had always been culinary arts, I answered diplomatically. Victoria Langley smiled slightly, seeming to sense the edited response. Well, your passion is evident in your work. She handed me a business card. When you're ready for the next step in your culinary journey, Ms. Winters, I'd be very interested in a conversation. After returning to the kitchen, I slipped the card into my pocket, stunned by the interaction. Chef Renard appeared beside me as I returned to cleaning my station. Langley was impressed. He stated flatly, Yes, chef. She will attempt to poach. You. It is what she does. He wiped an invisible spot from the stainless steel counter. You are not ready. No, chef. I agreed automatically, trained to defer to his judgment. But you will be, perhaps sooner than is typical. He fixed me with his penetrating gaze. You have talent, Winters. More importantly, you have discipline and perspective your younger colleagues lack. Your age, which many would consider a disadvantage, in this industry, may prove your greatest strength. Coming from Renard, this assessment was equivalent to effusive praise. I struggled to maintain professional composure while absorbing the significance of his words. Thank you, chef. Do not thank me. Continue to improve. He moved away, then added over his shoulder, You will create another special item next month. Begin your preparation. That night, too wired to sleep despite physical exhaustion, I called Layla to share the events of the evening. Victoria Langley wants to talk to you about a restaurant concept, she repeated incredulously. Maya, that's huge. Apex-backed chefs almost always end up with Michelin recognition. It's premature, I cautioned. Chef Renard says I'm not ready, and he's right. I have so much more to learn at Maison. But eventually, Layla let the implication hang. Eventually, I agreed, allowing myself a moment to envision the possibility. My own restaurant, my vision, my menu. Have you told David? The question punctured my euphoria slightly. David and I had maintained our tentative reconnection over the past months, meeting for dinner during his Chicago visits, occasionally, speaking by phone. The interactions were cordial, sometimes even warm, but neither of us had pushed for decisions about our marital status. Not yet, I admitted. It feels too preliminary to share. And honestly, I'm not sure how he'd react. He's been supportive of your culinary career lately, Layla pointed out. Supportive of my employment at an established, prestigious restaurant, I clarified. Backing a new restaurant concept is much riskier, financially and otherwise. I'm not sure supportive David would extend that far. Only one way to find out, she observed. But Maya, remember, this is your dream, your talent, your future. Whatever happens with David, don't let his reaction diminish this moment. After we hung up, I sat at my tiny kitchen counter, Victoria Langley's business card propped against the salt cellar. The possibility it represented was both exhilarating and terrifying, a potential culmination of the journey that had begun that Tuesday evening when David had suggested ordering pizza instead of eating my coq au vin. How fitting that a reimagined version of that very dish had now opened a door to possibilities I hadn't dared imagine. David's next Chicago visit coincided with a rare day off from Maison. We arranged to meet for lunch at a casual neighborhood bistro, a significant departure from the fine dining establishments he typically preferred. "This is different for you," I observed as he studied the simple menu of elevated comfort foods. "Trying to expand my culinary horizons," he replied with a small smile. "Besides, you mentioned the chef here is an ex-maison cook. I trust your professional network." We ordered, and I found myself studying David with fresh eyes. His usual crisp corporate appearance had softened somewhat. Casual jacket instead of suit, hair slightly longer, posture more relaxed. The changes were subtle but noticeable to someone who had spent years attuned to his every habit. "How are things at Seward and Hayes?" I asked, referring to his marketing firm. "Still pursuing the CMO position?" A shadow crossed his face. "Actually, no. There have been some changes in my professional situation." "What kind of changes?" He hesitated, arranging his silverware with that precision that always emerged when he was uncomfortable. "I've been downsized." "What?" I set down my water glass with more force than intended. "When did this happen?" 6 weeks ago." He met my gaze directly. "The firm lost 2 major clients to a competitor. Senior management used it as an opportunity for strategic restructuring, which apparently meant eliminating my position along with several others." "David, I'm so sorry." Despite our complicated relationship, I felt genuine sympathy. His corporate identity had always been central to his self-concept. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Pride, initially." He shrugged. "Then I wanted to figure out my next steps before discussing it." "And have you? Figured out next steps?" "I've had some interest from several firms. 2 formal interviews, 1 promising." He took a careful sip of his sparkling water. "But I'm also considering a different direction entirely." "Different how?" "I've been consulting with a few small businesses on marketing strategy, startups, local establishments needing help with branding and positioning." An unfamiliar enthusiasm animated his features. "It's completely different from corporate work. More hands-on, immediate impact, direct client relationships." "That sounds not at all like something you would have considered a year ago," I observed, trying to conceal my surprise. "A lot has changed in a year." He looked at me meaningfully, including my perspective on career, security, and what constitutes meaningful work. Our food arrived, temporarily pausing the conversation. As we began eating, David sampled his duck confit with uncharacteristic attentiveness, analyzing flavors and textures with genuine interest rather than mere politeness. "This is excellent," he commented. "The crispy skin against the tender meat, that hint of orange in the sauce. It all works together beautifully." I smiled at his assessment. "Your palate is developing." "I've been paying more attention," he admitted. "Taking cooking classes, actually. Basic techniques, nothing fancy." "I wanted to better understand your world." The revelation stunned me. "You're taking cooking classes?" "Try not to look so shocked," he said with a self-deprecating smile. "I'm not terrible, though I did burn risotto rather spectacularly last week." "Turns out constant stirring actually is necessary. I just never thought you'd be interested in cooking." "Neither did I. But it's been enlightening. I have a new appreciation for what you do at Maison every day." He set down his fork. "Maya, I need to tell you something else. I've been looking at properties in Chicago." "Properties?" "For my consulting business. And living." He met my gaze directly. "I've been considering relocating here permanently." The implications hung between us, unspoken but obvious. David moving to Chicago would fundamentally change the nature of our separation. No more convenient distance, no more limiting interactions to his business trips. We would have to actively decide whether to rebuild our marriage or formally end it. "That's significant," I managed, mind racing. "I know." He reached for my hand across the table, not claiming, just connecting. And I want to be absolutely clear. I'm not doing this with any expectations about us. Whether we ultimately reconcile or divorce, I've realized I need a fresh start professionally. Chicago offers that. When would this happen? 2 months, give or take. I'm closing up affairs in Connecticut, exploring office spaces here. He released my hand. I wanted you to know first, given our complicated situation. I appreciate that, I said, genuinely meaning it. The David of a year ago would have made this decision unilaterally, perhaps even expecting me to accommodate his plans. This consideration of my perspective represented real change. I explained Victoria Langley's interest, Chef Renard's assessment of my progress, and the possibility, however distant, of eventually developing my own restaurant concept. To my surprise, David listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions about timelines, concept development, and financial structures for chef-driven restaurants. "That's extraordinary, Maya," he said when I'd finished. "Intimidating, certainly, but exactly the kind of opportunity someone with your talent deserves." "You think so?" I searched his face for any hint of the condescension that had characterized his early reactions to my culinary pursuits. I know so. His sincerity was unmistakable. "You've proven everyone wrong, including me, about what you're capable of achieving in this industry." The next 3 months at Maison transformed my culinary trajectory. Chef Renard, perhaps prompted by Victoria Langley's interest, accelerated my responsibilities beyond the typical progression. I was assigned increasingly complex preparations, invited to contribute ideas for seasonal menu adaptations, and occasionally permitted to supervise newer commis during prep shifts. "Your celeriac velouté needs more acidity," Chef Renard commented one afternoon, tasting a sauce I'd developed for a special event. It wasn't criticism, but collaboration, a significant evolution in our working relationship. "Perhaps a touch of preserved lemon," I suggested, already reaching for the ingredient. He nodded approvingly. "Try it. Then consider whether sherry vinegar might achieve the same balance with more subtlety." These interactive moments became my most valuable education, transcending mere technique to develop the refined palate and decisive instincts required of a chef de cuisine. While my colleagues mastered specific stations through repetition, I was being groomed for broader culinary perspective. Meanwhile, David moved forward with his relocation to Chicago, securing a small office space downtown and a furnished apartment in River North. While practical logistics had kept our interactions limited, the knowledge of his impending proximity created undeniable tension. Our tentative reconnection had been comfortable within the safety of physical distance. His permanent presence would force decisions we'd both been avoiding. One morning in early spring, exactly 1 year after I'd quit my marketing job, Chef Renard summoned me to his office before service. "Victoria Langley has requested a meeting with you," he stated without preamble. "She is interested in discussing potential opportunities." My heart accelerated. "You mentioned previously that I wasn't ready." "That was 6 months ago." He studied me critically. "You have progressed significantly. You are not fully formed as a chef, but your foundation is solid, your perspective unique. Langley recognizes this. What does this mean for my position at Maison?" "That depends on what she proposes and what you decide." No emotion colored his clinical assessment. "If she offers a sous chef position in an established restaurant, I would advise you to consider it seriously. If she suggests an executive position or your own concept immediately, I would recommend caution. You require more experience before such responsibility." His pragmatic analysis calmed my racing thoughts. "Thank you for your guidance, Chef." "You have earned this attention through discipline and talent," he acknowledged, the closest he came to personal praise. "Regardless of what you decide, your time at Maison has been adequately spent." From Chef Renard, this was equivalent to a Glowing recommendation. I struggled to maintain professional composure in the face of his unexpected affirmation. The meeting with Victoria Langley was scheduled for the following week, an elegant lunch at 16, the Michelin-starred restaurant, overlooking Chicago's skyline. I informed David during one of our increasingly frequent phone calls. "That's fantastic, Maya," he responded with genuine enthusiasm. "Any sense of what she might propose?" "Nothing specific," I replied, still cautious about building expectations. "Chef Renard thinks it might be a sous chef position somewhere, which would be appropriate for my experience level." "But you're hoping for more," David observed, his perception sharper than I remembered. "Maybe. Eventually." I hesitated, then decided honesty was essential. "I have ideas, David, concept notes, menu directions, service approaches I'd love to implement someday. Things that reflect my personal culinary perspective." "Your own restaurant?" he said. Not a question, but a recognition. "Yes. Though that's likely years away, after more training and experience." "Not necessarily." Something in his tone made me pause. "The traditional career path isn't the only route." "What do you mean?" "Just that there are multiple ways to achieve culinary goals. We should discuss possibilities after your meeting with Langley." He changed the subject smoothly. "Speaking of meetings, I've officially signed the lease for my office space, moving in next week." "That's good news," I said, noting the timing. "So you'll be established here before my meeting with Victoria?" "Yes, and Maya? I'd like to take you to dinner afterward if you're comfortable with that, to celebrate this milestone, whatever Langley proposes." I agreed, touched by his supportive gesture. The conversation left me thoughtful, however. David's cryptic comment about multiple routes to restaurant ownership seemed uncharacteristic of his usually straightforward approach. "Winters, you will develop and execute the fish course," he informed me, dropping this bombshell during morning lineup. "Something that showcases your personal perspective while maintaining Maison's standards. You have 4 days to finalize your concept." The assignment represented unprecedented responsibility and visibility. James Beard Foundation events were career-defining opportunities, typically reserved for established sous chefs at minimum. That Chef Renard would entrust a commis, even one with my accelerated progression, with a course was extraordinary. I spent every spare moment developing and refining ideas, eventually settling on a concept that honored Maison's classical French foundation while incorporating my perspective. Butter-poached halibut with spring vegetable nage, preserved lemon mousseline, and crispy maytake mushrooms. Chef Renard approved. My first test execution with minimal adjustments, another indication of how our working relationship had evolved. The balance is correct, the technique precise. It represents both Maison and your voice. Proceed. The James Beard dinner unfolded with the controlled chaos typical of high-profile culinary events. As service approached, I maintained laser focus on my station, mentally rehearsing each component of my dish. The pressure was immense, but oddly clarifying. All extraneous thoughts fell away, leaving only the precise sequence of techniques required for perfect execution. "Winters, you're up," Chef Marchand called, signaling my course in the progression. With studied calm, I directed my assigned team through the final assembly. Each plate emerged identical to my approved vision, the halibut perfectly cooked, the nage bright and aromatic, the components arranged with artistic precision. As the servers departed with my creation, I exhaled slowly, returning immediately to cleaning my station. Near midnight, as the event concluded, Chef Renard appeared beside me. "Your course was well received," he stated with characteristic understatement. Several guests specifically mentioned the balance of flavors. From him, this constituted effusive praise. "Thank you, Chef." Victoria Langley was particularly complimentary. He wiped an invisible spot from the counter. She has requested that you prepare a tasting menu for her following your meeting. 6 courses demonstrating your culinary perspective. My heart nearly stopped. A full tasting menu? Yes, she is accelerating her timeline for you. His expression remained neutral, but something in his tone conveyed both approval and caution. This represents significant opportunity but also risk. You will need to be thoroughly prepared. When would this tasting occur? Next week. You will use the private dining kitchen here at Maison. I will adjust your schedule to allow preparation. Time. He fixed me with his penetrating gaze. This is not common practice, Winters. I am permitting it because you have demonstrated exceptional potential. The implication was clear. This privilege reflected not just my abilities, but Chef Renard's personal investment in my development. I understand, Chef. I won't disappoint you. The days before my meeting with Victoria Langley passed in a blur of menu development and testing. Between my regular Maison shifts, I created and refined 6 courses that would showcase my technical skills, flavor sensibilities, and creative vision. A comprehensive statement of who I was as a chef. The morning of our scheduled lunch, I awoke with surprising calm. Whatever Victoria proposed, this meeting represented a pivotal moment in my culinary journey. Official recognition that I had progressed from amateur home cook to professional worthy of industry attention. I dressed carefully in the one non-chef outfit I'd brought to Chicago, a simple black dress that conveyed both professionalism and creative sensibility. As I prepared to leave my apartment, my phone buzzed with a text from David. Good luck today. You've earned this moment, whatever comes of it. The simple support steadied me further. Whatever complications remained in our personal relationship, I never doubted his genuine pride in my professional evolution. Victoria Langley awaited me at a prime table overlooking the Chicago River, elegant in understated designer wear that signaled her industry stature without ostentation. She greeted me warmly, immediately putting me at ease despite the meeting's significance. Chef Renard speaks highly of you, she began after we'd ordered. Coming from him, that's extraordinary. I've been fortunate to learn from him, I replied, diplomatically. More than fortune, I suspect. Her shrewd gaze assessed me. Renard doesn't invest in mediocrity, regardless of circumstances. He sees something special in your approach. We spoke generally through our first course, my background, training at Auguste, progression at Maison. As our main dishes arrived, Victoria shifted to more specific territory. I'll be direct, Maya. I'm interested in backing a restaurant concept, developed around your culinary perspective. She sipped her wine, allowing the statement's impact to register. Not immediately. You'll need more experience first. But I believe you have a unique voice worth developing. Despite Chef Renard's hints, the explicitness of her interest caught me off guard. That's extremely flattering. It's not flattery, it's business assessment. Her tone was matter-of-fact. Your coquille au vin amuse-bouche demonstrated technical precision and creative reinterpretation of classical techniques. Your halibut course at the beer dinner showed refined flavor balancing and aesthetic sensibility. The progression indicates someone developing a coherent culinary identity. She outlined a potential partnership structure, continued training at Maison for 6 more months, followed by a sous chef position at one of Apex's established restaurants for a year, then development of my own concept with their financial and operational backing. The timeline is accelerated compared to traditional chef development, she acknowledged. But your late entry to the profession actually works in your favor. You bring maturity, perspective, and life experience younger chefs typically lack. The proposal aligned perfectly with Chef Renard's advice. Continued training before taking on an executive role, progressive responsibility rather than immediate restaurant ownership. It was thoughtful, practical, and extraordinarily generous. I'm me, honored by your interest and impressed by the development path you've outlined, I responded. The tasting menu next week will give you a more comprehensive sense of my culinary direction. Indeed, Victoria smiled warmly, though I suspect it will confirm rather than inform my assessment. As our lunch concluded, she mentioned one additional detail. There's a property in West Loop that will be available for renovation in approximately 18 months. Former industrial space, excellent bones, ideal for a chef-driven concept. The timing would align well with your development timeline. I left lunch with Victoria floating on a cloud of possibility, her words replaying in my mind. Not just validation of my culinary abilities, but a concrete path toward restaurant ownership. The dream I'd barely allowed myself to articulate. Even privately. David was waiting at his newly established office when I arrived, eager to hear about the meeting. I'd texted him immediately after lunch, and he'd suggested meeting there rather than a restaurant for privacy during our conversation. "Tell me everything," he insisted, guiding me to a small seating area. His office was minimalist but thoughtfully arranged, a significant departure from the corporate styling of his previous workspace. I detailed Victoria's proposal, watching his reaction carefully. To my surprise, he showed no hint of the practical concerns or subtle skepticism I'd anticipated. Instead, his eyes lit with genuine excitement as I described the development timeline and eventual restaurant concept. "Maya, this is extraordinary," he said when I'd finished. "Victoria Langley doesn't make these offers lightly. She clearly recognizes your exceptional talent." "It's still preliminary," I cautioned. "The tasting menu next week will be the real test, which you'll execute brilliantly." His confidence warmed me. "Have you started planning your menu?" "I have concepts for each course, yes." I hesitated, then decided to share more. "I'm thinking of centering it around transformations, taking familiar dishes and elevating them through technique and perspective. Like your coq au vin amuse-bouche? Exactly. Recognizable flavor profiles reimagined through precise technique. I found myself elaborating on menu ideas, flavor combinations, and plating concepts, talking food with an enthusiasm I'd never expressed during our marriage, when I'd carefully modulated my hobby to avoid appearing obsessive. David listened, with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions about ingredients and techniques. As our conversation flowed, I realized he had indeed been educating himself about the culinary world. His questions reflected genuine understanding rather than polite curiosity. "You really have been taking cooking classes," I observed during a pause. "Every Saturday for 6 months," he confirmed with a self-deprecating smile. "Though I remain spectacularly average as a cook, my instructor says I approach recipes too literally, lacking intuition about when to adapt or adjust." "That sounds familiar," I teased, remembering his by-the-book approach to everything from vacation planning to retirement investing. He laughed, acknowledging the criticism. "Fair enough. I'm trying to develop more flexibility, in cooking and elsewhere." An unexpected, comfortable silence fell between us. Not awkward, just thoughtful. After a moment, David cleared his throat. "I have something I'd like to discuss with you, Maya. Something related to your potential restaurant?" "Oh?" I raised an eyebrow, curious. "This is preliminary, contingent on many factors, including your interest," he prefaced, suddenly businesslike. "But I've been exploring investment structures for independent restaurants, particularly chef-driven concepts." "Investment structures?" "Yes. While Apex's backing is invaluable for industry connections and operational expertise, their equity requirements are typically substantial." He reached for a folder on his desk. "I've been analyzing alternative financing models that could potentially increase your ownership percentage while maintaining access to their expertise." I stared at him, trying to process this unexpected development. "You've been researching restaurant financing? Why?" He met my gaze directly. "Because I believe in your talent, and because I know how important creative control will be for your concept." "David, Let me finish, please. He opened the folder, revealing detailed financial projections. I've liquidated some of my longer-term investments. Combined with my severance package, I have capital available for strategic placement. The implication slowly registered. You want to invest in my restaurant? A restaurant that doesn't even exist yet? I want to be part of making your vision a reality, he corrected gently. Financially, yes, but potentially in other ways too. My marketing background and new consulting focus could contribute to brand development, positioning, digital strategy, areas where many independent restaurants struggle. I sat back, stunned by the proposal. This is unexpected. I know. He closed the folder. And I want to be absolutely clear. This is a business proposition, not an attempt to reclaim our relationship through financial entanglement. Whether we ultimately reconcile or not, I believe in your culinary vision and want to support its realization. The David sitting across from me, thoughtful, supportive, willing to risk capital on my dream, was almost unrecognizable from the husband who had dismissed my cooking as amateur just 1 year earlier. I left lunch with Victoria floating on a cloud of possibility, her words replaying in my mind. Not just validation of my culinary abilities, but a concrete path toward restaurant ownership. The dream I'd barely allowed myself to articulate. Even privately. David was waiting at his newly established office when I arrived, eager to hear about the meeting. I'd texted him immediately after lunch, and he'd suggested meeting there rather than a restaurant for privacy during our conversation. Tell me everything, he insisted, guiding me to a small seating area. His office was minimalist but thoughtfully arranged, a significant departure from the corporate styling of his previous workspace. I detailed Victoria's proposal, watching his reaction carefully. To my surprise, he showed no hint of the practical concerns or subtle skepticism I'd anticipated. Instead, his eyes lit with genuine excitement as I described the development timeline and eventual restaurant concept. Maya, this is extraordinary, he said when I'd finished. Victoria Langley doesn't make these offers lightly. She clearly recognizes your exceptional talent. It's still preliminary, I cautioned. The tasting menu next week will be the real test, which you'll execute brilliantly. His confidence warmed me. Have you started planning your menu? I have concepts for each course, yes. I hesitated, then decided to share more. I'm thinking of centering it around transformations, taking familiar dishes and elevating them through technique and perspective. Like your coq au vin amuse-bouche? Exactly. Recognizable flavor profiles reimagined through precise technique. I found myself elaborating on menu ideas, flavor combinations, and plating concepts, talking food with an enthusiasm I'd never expressed during our marriage, when I'd carefully modulated my hobby to avoid appearing obsessive. David listened, with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions about ingredients and techniques. As our conversation flowed, I realized he had indeed been educating himself about the culinary world. His questions reflected genuine understanding rather than polite curiosity. You really have been taking cooking classes, I observed during a pause. Every Saturday for 6 months, he confirmed with a self-deprecating smile. Though I remain spectacularly average as a cook, my instructor says I approach recipes too literally, lacking intuition about when to adapt or adjust. That sounds familiar, I teased, remembering his by-the-book approach to everything from vacation planning to retirement investing. He laughed, acknowledging the criticism. Fair enough. I'm trying to develop more flexibility, in cooking and elsewhere. An unexpected, comfortable silence fell between us. Not awkward, just thoughtful. After a moment, David cleared his throat. I have something I'd like to discuss with you, Maya. Something related to your potential restaurant? Oh? I raised an eyebrow, curious. This is preliminary, contingent on many factors, including your interest, he prefaced, suddenly businesslike. but I've been exploring investment structures for independent restaurants, particularly chef-driven concepts. Investment structures? Yes. While Apex's backing is invaluable for industry connections and operational expertise, their equity requirements are typically substantial. He reached for a folder on his desk. I've been analyzing alternative financing models that could potentially increase your ownership percentage while maintaining access to their expertise. I stared at him, trying to process this unexpected development. You've been researching restaurant financing? Why? He met my gaze directly. Because I believe in your talent, and because I know how important creative control will be for your concept. David, let me finish, please. He opened the folder, revealing detailed financial projections. I've liquidated some of my longer-term investments. Combined with my severance package, I have capital available for strategic placement. The implications slowly registered. You want to invest in my restaurant? A restaurant that doesn't even exist yet? I want to be part of making your vision a reality, he corrected gently. Financially, yes, but potentially in other ways too. My marketing background and new consulting focus could contribute to brand development, positioning, digital strategy, areas where many independent restaurants struggle. I sat back, stunned by the proposal. This is unexpected. I know. He closed the folder. And I want to be absolutely clear. This is a business proposition, not an attempt to reclaim our relationship through financial entanglement. Whether we ultimately reconcile or not, I believe in your culinary vision and want to support its realization. The David sitting across from me, thoughtful, supportive, willing to risk capital on my dream, was almost unrecognizable from the husband who had dismissed my cooking as amateur just 1 year earlier. The days before my tasting menu for Victoria Langley passed in a blur of meticulous preparation. Chef Renard had arranged for me to use Maison's private dining kitchen during off-hours, an unprecedented privilege that underscored his investment in my development. Your menu concept is sound, he commented after reviewing my planned progression. 6 courses that demonstrate technique, creativity, and personal perspective. Now execution must be flawless. I tested each component repeatedly, refining techniques, and adjusting seasoning by minute increments. Every element required perfect timing and handling, with no room for error or inconsistency. The pressure was immense but clarifying, all my focus channeled into creating a comprehensive statement of my culinary voice. The morning of the tasting, I arrived at Maison at 5 a.m. to begin final preparations. Chef Renard appeared briefly before lunch service, observing my mise en place with critical attention. You are prepared, he stated after inspecting my station. It wasn't a question but an acknowledgement. Remember what I have taught you about balance, precision, and restraint. Cook with confidence, but never arrogance. Yes, chef. His words steadied my nerves, reminding me of how far I'd progressed under his exacting guidance. I will return for the service, he added, surprising me. Chef Renard rarely adjusted his schedule for anyone. Marchand will handle lunch expediting. At precisely 6 p.m., Victoria Langley arrived with 2 associates. Her chief financial officer and executive culinary director, she explained. Chef Renard greeted them professionally before taking an unprecedented position. He would observe but not participate, making it clear this was my presentation entirely. Chef Winters has prepared a tasting menu reflecting her personal culinary perspective, he informed them. I am here merely as a witness to her independent execution. The significance of his statement, addressing me as chef for the first time, was not lost on anyone present. It represented his professional endorsement, a formal acknowledgement that I had progressed from student to colleague. I presented each course personally, explaining the concept and technique while maintaining the composed demeanor Maison had instilled in me. First, An amuse-bouche of compressed watermelon with tomato water gel and basil oil. A play on traditional summer flavor combinations, elevated through modernist techniques. Second, a cold appetizer of king crab with avocado mousse, citrus segments, and yuzu foam, delicate flavors balanced with textural contrast. Third, a warm appetizer of wild mushroom tortellini with truffle emulsion and aged parmesan. Classic Italian comfort transformed through French technical precision. Fourth, a fish course featuring butter-poached sea bass with spring pea puree, morel, mushrooms, and lemon verbena nage. Seasonal ingredients showcasing restraint and balance. Fifth, a meat course of sous vide, lamb loin with smoked eggplant, preserved lemon couscous, and harissa jus, Middle Eastern flavors reinterpreted through classical French methodology. Finally, dessert. A deconstructed tarte tatin with caramelized apple spheres, brown butter powder, and vanilla bean ice cream. Familiar comfort elevated through technical manipulation. Throughout the service, Victoria and her team tasted attentively, occasionally exchanging notes but offering no immediate feedback. Chef Renard observed from a distance, his expression characteristically impassive. As I presented the final course, I felt a curious calm. Whatever Victoria's ultimate assessment, I had executed my vision with precision and integrity. The menu represented not just my technical abilities, but my culinary philosophy. Familiar flavors reimagined through refined technique, comfort elevated through careful transformation. After the dessert plates were cleared, Victoria addressed me directly for the first time since greeting. "Chef Winters, would you join us at the table? I believe we have matters to discuss." I removed my apron, smoothed my chef's jacket, and took the offered seat. Chef Renard remained standing nearby, silent but attentive. "Your menu was exceptional." Victoria began without preamble. Each course demonstrated technical mastery while maintaining a coherent point of view. Most importantly, every dish reflected genuine understanding of flavor balance and textural contrast, skills that cannot be taught, only developed through innate sensibility. Her associates nodded in agreement, the culinary director adding, "Particularly impressive was the progression, how each course built upon the previous while maintaining distinct identity. The menu told a story rather than presenting disconnected dishes." "Thank you," I responded, maintaining professional composure, despite the internal thrill their validation produced. "Based on what I've experienced tonight, I'd like to modify my original proposal." My heart stuttered. Modified how? Was she reconsidering her interest? "Rather than waiting 6 months, I believe you're ready to transition to a sous chef position." "Immediately," she continued. "At L'Étoile, our French contemporary concept in River North. 6 months there, followed by executive sous chef at Aria for another 6, then development of your own restaurant concept with our backing. L'Étoile, a Michelin-starred destination helmed by chef Marcus Beaumont, known for his creative interpretation of classical French cuisine." The position represented significant advancement and invaluable experience under another masterful mentor. "The accelerated timeline reflects our confidence in your readiness," Victoria explained. "Chef Renard has indicated you've maximized the learning opportunities at Maison. It's time for you to experience different professional kitchens, different management approaches." I glanced at Chef Renard, whose slight nod confirmed her statement. He had discussed my progression with her, determining I was ready for advancement even before tonight's tasting. "I would be honored to accept the position at L'Étoile," I replied, mind already racing with the implications of this accelerated timeline. "Excellent." Victoria smiled, warming her typically businesslike demeanor. "There's one additional matter. The property I mentioned previously, in West Loop. I've scheduled a viewing for next week, while your restaurant opening remains. Approximately 18 months away, beginning to envision the physical space will help concretize your concept development. After Victoria and her team departed, Chef Renard remained. For perhaps the first time since I'd known him, his typically impassive expression softened slightly. "You have done well, Winters," he stated with characteristic economy. "Your progression at Maison has been adequate." From him, this constituted effusive praise. I struggled to maintain professional composure, suddenly overwhelmed by the realization that my time under his mentorship was concluding. "Thank you, Chef, for everything you've taught me." He dismissed my gratitude with a slight gesture. "You were receptive to instruction. Not all students are." He paused, then added something uncharacteristically personal. "I will watch your career with interest." After his departure, I cleaned the kitchen methodically, using the familiar ritual to process the evening's momentous developments. Sous-chef at L'Étoile, accelerated timeline toward my own restaurant, property viewing in West Loop, Chef Renard's understated but significant endorsement, and underlying everything, the complex reality of David's investment proposal still awaiting my response. I texted him from the kitchen. Tasting went well. Victoria offered sous-chef position at L'Étoile, starting immediately. His response came quickly. "Congratulations. L'Étoile is exceptional. When can I take you to dinner?" To celebrate, we arranged to meet the following evening at a neighborhood bistro, my choice rather than fine dining, as I needed comfortable surroundings to process everything that was happening. When I arrived, David was already seated, a bottle of champagne, chilling beside the table. "I hope this isn't presumptuous," he said, gesturing to the champagne. "But sous-chef at L'Étoile, after just 9 months in the industry, deserves proper celebration." "It's perfect," I assured him, touched by the gesture. As the server poured our champagne, I studied David with fresh perspective. The man sitting across from me had evolved substantially from the husband who had casually dismissed my cooking a year earlier. His support for my culinary journey seemed genuinely enthusiastic rather than merely accommodating. "Tell me everything about the tasting," he encouraged after we'd ordered. What was Victoria's reaction to each course? I detailed the evening's progression, describing each dish and the feedback received. David listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions that revealed his growing knowledge of culinary techniques and industry dynamics. Chef Renard called me Chef Winters for the first time, I concluded, still processing that significant moment. It felt like formal acknowledgement that I've progressed from student to professional. "Because you have," David affirmed, in record time with exceptional dedication. As our main courses arrived, the conversation shifted to practical matters. My transition timeline to L'Étoile, the property viewing scheduled for the following week, the accelerated path toward restaurant development. David listened carefully, occasionally offering suggestions about operational considerations I hadn't yet encountered in my culinary education. "Your marketing background is showing," I observed with a small smile. "Old habits," he acknowledged, "though I'm trying to apply that expertise more usefully now." The reference to his investment proposal hung unspoken between us. After a moment's hesitation, I decided to address it directly. "I've been thinking about your offer," I began carefully. "To invest in my eventual restaurant." He set down his fork, giving me his full attention. "And?" "I'm interested in exploring the possibility," I said, having reached this conclusion after careful consideration. "Your financial support could indeed provide greater creative control than typical restaurant investment structures, and your marketing expertise would be valuable for developing the business strategy." Relief and pleasure crossed his face, though he maintained careful restraint. "I'm glad to hear that. I want to emphasize again, this would be a business arrangement, not an attempt to complicate our personal situation." "I understand, and I appreciate that clarity." I took a deliberate sip of champagne. "But, David, we do need to address our personal situation at some point. You're now permanently in Chicago. I'm advancing in my culinary career here." We've been separated for nearly a year without making any formal decisions about our marriage. He nodded, acknowledging the elephant in the room we'd both been avoiding. You're right. We've been in limbo for too long. So what do we do? I asked directly. File for divorce? Attempt reconciliation? Continue this indefinite separation? David considered the question with unusual thoughtfulness. What do you want, Maya? Truly? The directness of his question caught me off guard. Throughout our marriage, major decisions had typically followed his preferences, with my desires accommodated, rather than centered. Sal of my cooking was just the final manifestation of a pattern, my passions treated as secondary, my ambitions as hobbies. That's fair, he acknowledged, not attempting to defend his past behavior. But now, I struggled to articulate the complexity of my current feelings. You've changed. I've changed. We relate to each other differently than before. We do, he agreed. With more mutual respect and genuine interest in each other's pursuits. Exactly, which makes the decision more complicated than it seemed a year ago. David reached across the table, not quite touching my hand but offering connection. What if we don't decide immediately? What if we allow ourselves to explore this new dynamic between us without pressure for formal resolution? While potentially becoming business partners in my restaurant? I raised a skeptical eyebrow. With clear parameters and professional agreements drafted by independent attorneys, he clarified. The investment would proceed regardless of our personal outcome. I considered his suggestion. The practical side of me recognized the wisdom in not rushing a decision about our marriage while both our professional lives were in significant transition. Yet the potential complications of business partnership with my estranged husband remained concerning. Let me think about it, I said, finally. Both the investment and the relationship ambiguity. Of course. He raised his champagne glass. In the meantime, we should focus on celebrating your extraordinary achievement. To Chef Winters of L'Étoile, and eventually of her own Michelin-worthy restaurant. I clinked my glass against his, allowing myself to fully appreciate the milestone. Whatever complications remained in my personal life, my culinary journey had progressed beyond my wildest expectations. To transformations, I offered as my own toast. Of dishes and lives. My transition to L'Étoile unfolded with whirlwind intensity. One day I was commis at Maison under Chef Renard's exacting standards. The next I was sous chef in Chef Marcus Beaumont's dynamic kitchen, responsible for an entire station and supervising junior cooks during service. The promotion represented not just increased responsibility, but a dramatic salary jump, from Maison's modest commis wage to a reasonable professional income. For the first time since leaving my marketing career, I could afford more than just basic necessities. I celebrated by upgrading to a slightly larger apartment with a proper kitchen, though still modest by civilian standards. This feels palatial, compared to your last place, Layla remarked during her first visit to Chicago. My sister had flown in specifically to tour my new workplace and apartment, supportive as always of my culinary journey. 14 whole square feet of counter space, I agreed with a smile. Practically luxurious. And only one roommate, she teased, referring to the professional knife collection occupying prominent display on my wall. They're better company than most humans, I defended. Never leave dishes in the sink or play music at 3 a.m. We were preparing for Victoria's scheduled property viewing later that afternoon, the potential future home of my own restaurant. I'd invited Layla to join us, wanting her perspective on the space and its possibilities. So, are we going to discuss the David situation? She asked, as we walked toward the West Loop address. Or are we pretending that's not complicated? I sighed. Having anticipated this conversation, it's definitely complicated. He wants to invest in your restaurant while you're still technically married but functionally separated, she summarized bluntly. What could possibly go wrong? He's been surprisingly supportive, Layla. and his investment would give me greater creative control than typical restaurant financing structures. I don't doubt his intentions are good, she conceded, but mixing business with your already complex personal situation seems risky, which is why I haven't given him a definitive answer, I explained. I'm still weighing the practical benefits against the potential complications. The property Victoria had arranged for us to view was a former manufacturing space on Randolph Street, Chicago's Restaurant Row, where many of the city's most acclaimed dining establishments had emerged over the past decade. The exterior maintained industrial charm with original brick and large factory windows, while the interior offered a blank canvas of possibilities with its open floor plan and 16-foot ceilings. The footprint allows for approximately 75 seats, plus a bar area and visible kitchen, Victoria explained as we toured. The basement level could accommodate private dining, wine storage, and additional prep areas. I moved through the space slowly, envisioning its potential transformation. Despite its current raw state, I could clearly see the restaurant it could become. The flow from entrance to dining areas, the kitchen layout optimized for both efficiency and visibility, the specific table where guests would enjoy their first taste of my culinary vision. "You can see it, can't you?" Victoria observed, noting my focused attention. "The restaurant taking shape in your mind." "Yes," I admitted. "Very clearly." "That's the mark of a chef truly ready for their own concept," she approved. "The ability to visualize not just dishes but the entire dining experience." As we continued the tour, discussing permits, renovation timelines, and budget considerations, I became increasingly convinced this was indeed the perfect location for my restaurant. The neighborhood combined accessibility with culinary credibility. The space itself offered both character and flexibility. The timeline aligned with my development path through L'Etoile and Aria. "I love it," I told Victoria as we concluded the tour. "It feels right." "I thought it might," she smiled. "The property won't formally come available for another 14 months, but the owner is willing to secure it with a reasonable deposit now." "Which Apex would provide," Layla clarified. "Ever practical about financial matters?" "Typically, yes." Victoria glanced at me with subtle perception, though I understand there may be alternative investment structures under consideration. Her diplomatic phrasing made it clear she knew about David's potential involvement without directly addressing it. I appreciated her discretion in front of Layla, whose protective skepticism was already evident. Later that evening, over dinner at a neighborhood tavern, Layla continued our interrupted conversation. "The space is incredible," she acknowledged. "I can absolutely see your restaurant there. But Maya, be careful about David's involvement. Restaurant investment is inherently risky, and adding personal complications makes it more so. Makes it my fork. And I don't have a clear answer." "What does your gut tell you?" Layla pressed. "Not your practical side or your ambitious side. Your instinct." I considered her question seriously. That David has genuinely changed. That his support for my culinary career is sincere, not manipulative. That this investment opportunity could indeed benefit us both professionally. And personally? Do you want to reconcile with him? The question I'd been avoiding for months, even with myself. "I don't know," I admitted. "Sometimes when we're together now, I see glimpses of a relationship that could work, with mutual respect and support for each other's pursuits. Other times, I remember all the reasons our marriage failed and wonder if fundamental patterns can really change." Layla reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "Maybe that's your answer for now. Not knowing is a valid position while you both continue to evolve. But the investment decision can't wait indefinitely," I pointed out. "Victoria needs to know how we're proceeding with the property deposit. Then make the investment decision separately from the relationship decision," she suggested. "With proper legal agreements and clear business parameters. Whether you ultimately reconcile or divorce, the restaurant financing can stand on its own terms." Layla's suggestion to separate the investment decision from our unresolved personal relationship, provided a framework that finally allowed progress. After she returned home, I scheduled a meeting with David at his office, determined to establish clear parameters. "I'd like to proceed with your investment proposal," I told him directly, "but with specific conditions." He nodded, professional mode engaged. "I expected nothing less. What are your terms?" "First, independent legal representation for both of us. The agreement needs to protect both our interests regardless of our personal relationship's outcome." "Absolutely," he agreed. "I've already researched attorneys who specialize in restaurant investment structures." Second, complete creative control remains with me. Financial input? Yes. Marketing consultation? Welcome. But final decisions on menu, staffing, and culinary direction must be mine alone. Of course, that's the entire point of this arrangement. To ensure your vision isn't compromised by typical investor demands. Third, I continued, having carefully considered this condition. The arrangement proceeds regardless of our marital status. Whether we ultimately reconcile or divorce, the investment structure remains binding. David considered this point carefully. That's reasonable, though it would require specific legal language addressing various scenarios. Certainly doable. And, finally, I hesitated before articulating the most personal condition. We need to be transparent with Victoria about our relationship and this arrangement. No appearances of impropriety or hidden agendas. I agree completely. He looked relieved by my candor. Professional integrity is essential for both our reputations. With these foundational parameters established, we proceeded to develop the investment structure over the following weeks. David connected with financial advisors specializing in hospitality ventures, while I consulted with chefs who had navigated similar arrangements. Victoria, when informed of our potential approach, expressed measured support while recommending additional safeguards specific to restaurant operations. Meanwhile, my professional responsibilities at L'Etoile consumed most. Waking hours. Chef Beaumont operated his kitchen with a dynamism dramatically different from Chef Renard's methodical precision. Where Maison emphasized classical technique and consistency, L'Etoile celebrated creative interpretation and seasonal spontaneity. No, the sauce needs more acidity, but not citrus, something unexpected, Chef Beaumont would declare, tasting my preparations. Think outside conventional pairings. Challenge the palate. This approach, less structured but equally demanding, expanded my culinary perspective significantly. Chef Renard had built my technical foundation. Chef Beaumont was teaching me to transcend it with creative confidence. 3 months into my position at L'Etoile, our investment arrangement with David was formalized. The structure was elegant in its simplicity. David would provide 60% of the capital required beyond Apex's contribution, resulting in a final equity distribution of 60% to me, 25% to Apex, and 15% to David. All creative decisions remained explicitly under my control, while David would provide consulting services for marketing and business development. I believe this serves everyone's interests effectively, our mediating attorney explained during the final review. Chef Winters maintains majority ownership and creative control. Apex contributes industry expertise and operational support, and Mr. Winters provides supplemental capital and marketing consultation while receiving reasonable equity participation. With signatures complete and initial capital transfers arranged, the property deposit was secured. My restaurant, still conceptual but increasingly tangible, had taken its first concrete step toward reality. That evening, David suggested dinner to celebrate this milestone. We met at a small neighborhood place, neither fine dining nor casual, but somewhere in the comfortable middle ground we'd been gravitating toward recently. To proper documentation and clear parameters, he toasted, raising his wine glass with a hint of self-deprecating humor. Spoken like a true business person, I laughed, clinking my glass against his. But yes, to partnership done right. As we enjoyed our meal, the conversation flowed with surprising ease. We discussed design concepts for the restaurant space, potential naming directions, early menu ideas, all the creative elements now officially in development with the property secured. "Have you considered transformation as a name?" David suggested. "It's been a consistent theme in your cooking and your personal journey this past year." "It's a bit on the nose," I demurred, though the concept resonated. "But the theme is definitely central to my culinary approach." "Rice. Not entirely," he admitted. "Though there would be a certain poetic justice to naming your restaurant after the dish I foolishly dismissed. Which you still haven't actually tasted in its current iteration," I pointed out. "True." He hesitated, then added with careful casualness, "Perhaps you'll make it for me sometime." The invitation hung between us, not just a request for a dish, but a potential step toward more personal reconnection. After a moment's consideration, I decided to meet it directly. "I could do that," I agreed, "though my apartment kitchen is a far cry from L'Etoile's facilities." "I'm sure you'll manage brilliantly regardless." His expression turned more serious. "Maya, now that the business arrangement is finalized, I think we should address the elephant in the room more directly." "Our marriage," I supplied, knowing this conversation was inevitable. "Yes, we've been separated for over a year, in this undefined state that's neither actively married nor legally divorced." "True." I set down my fork, giving the conversation my full attention. "What are your thoughts?" "Honestly," he met my gaze directly, "I'm not ready to give up on us." His candor caught me off guard. While our interactions had gradually warmed over recent months, neither of us had directly addressed reconciliation possibilities. "What exactly does that mean?" I asked carefully. "It means I value who we are now, both, individually and together, more than I did before our separation." He chose his words with evident deliberation. "We've both changed in significant ways. You've found your true calling and professional confidence. I've developed more flexibility and genuine interest in your passions. Those are positive changes," I acknowledged, "but they don't automatically solve the fundamental issues that led to our separation." "No, they don't," he agreed. "Which is why I'm not suggesting we simply resume our marriage as if nothing happened. I'm suggesting we consider dating each other again, intentionally exploring whether this new dynamic between us could support a healthy relationship." "Dating?" I repeated, finding the concept both absurd and oddly appealing. "Like dinner and movies? Like getting to know each other in our current forms, without the baggage of marital expectations?" A small smile touched his lips. "I'd like the opportunity to court Chef Winters properly, with the respect and interest her talent deserves." Despite myself, I laughed at the formal phrasing. "That sounds suspiciously like a line you've rehearsed." "Several times," he admitted with unexpected self-deprecation. "Was it too much?" "Perhaps slightly theatrical," I conceded, appreciating his honesty. "But the sentiment is intriguing." "Intriguing enough to consider?" I took a thoughtful sip of wine, weighing the proposal. The idea of dating my own husband seemed peculiar, yet it offered a structured approach to exploring our evolved relationship without immediately committing to reconciliation or divorce. "I think I could consider it," I said finally. "With specific parameters." "Of course there would be parameters," he teased gently. "I would expect nothing less from you. Professional commitments remain the priority for both of us," I clarified. "My schedule at L'Etoile is demanding and unpredictable." "Understood. My consulting work offers more flexibility. We maintain separate residences," I continued. "No cohabitation while we're in this exploration phase." "Agreed, though I hope I'll be invited over for that coq au vin at some point." "And no commitment timeline," I concluded. "We take this at whatever pace feels appropriate, without artificial deadlines for decisions." Those all seem like reasonable conditions. He reached across the table, not quite touching my hand, but offering connection. Does this mean Chef Winters will accept a dinner invitation from me? One not related to business or celebration of professional milestones? I found myself smiling at his formal approach. Yes, I believe she will, though her availability is limited to Monday lunches and Sunday evenings for the foreseeable future. I'll take whatever fits her schedule, he assured me. Sunday evening. Perhaps. I've heard about a new place in Bucktown with an interesting approach to modern American cuisine. And so our strange new courtship began. Tentative at first, gradually finding its rhythm within the constraints of my demanding culinary career and David's evolving consulting business. Sunday evening became our regular date night, supplemented by occasional Monday lunches and rare midweek coffee meetings when schedules aligned. To my surprise, I found myself genuinely enjoying these encounters. Without the pressure of marital expectations, we interacted with refreshing honesty and curiosity. David demonstrated sincere interest in my culinary development at L'Étoile, while I discovered genuine respect for his entrepreneurial approach to marketing consultation. 6 weeks into this arrangement, I finally invited him to my apartment for the promised coq au vin, my evolved version, refined through professional training and technical precision. This is... He took another bite, expression thoughtful as he analyzed the flavors. The depth is remarkable. How did you achieve this complexity in the sauce? Multiple reductions with different wine bases, I explained, watching his reaction carefully. The initial reduction uses a full-bodied Burgundy, while the finishing sauce incorporates a lighter Pinot Noir for brightness. It's extraordinary, Maya. His appreciation seemed genuine rather than performative. Completely transformed from any previous version, yet still recognizably coq au vin. That's precisely my goal in all my cooking, honoring traditional foundations, while elevating through technique and personal perspective. The theme of transformation again, he observed with a smile. It really does encapsulate your culinary approach perfectly. After dinner, as we shared the remainder of the wine at my small kitchen counter, David broached a subject we'd been avoiding. Fair enough. He swirled his wine thoughtfully. What about renovation? French for renovation or renewal. Honoring the classical foundations of your training while acknowledging the transformation aspect. The suggestion resonated unexpectedly. That has potential, I acknowledged. Conceptually appropriate without being too literal. Just my humble marketing opinion, he said with deliberate lightness. The chef maintains complete creative control, as contractually established. I laughed at his formal reference to our agreement. Your humble marketing opinion is actually quite valuable in this context. Renovation, I'll consider it seriously. As he prepared to leave later that evening, an awkward moment arose at my door. The classic end-of-date scenario, complicated by our unique relationship status. Were we estranged spouses experimenting with reconciliation? New romantic interests? Getting to know each other? Business partners sharing a meal? David resolved the tension with characteristic adaptability. Thank you for dinner, he said simply. The best coq au vin I've ever experienced, and even better company. Thank you for appreciating it properly this time, I replied with a small smile. He leaned forward, telegraphing his intention with careful deliberation, and placed a gentle kiss on my cheek. Until Sunday? Until Sunday, I confirmed, surprised by the pleasant warmth his gesture had evoked. As I closed the door behind him, I realized our strange new approach, dating my own husband while maintaining professional boundaries, was actually working better than I'd anticipated. Without the weight of marital discord, we were discovering genuine connection based on who we had become rather than who we had been. My 6 months at L'Étoile passed with remarkable speed. Under Chef Beaumont's creative guidance, I developed greater confidence in my culinary voice, still rooted in classical technique, but increasingly willing to take calculated risks with flavor combinations, and presentations. "You've progressed nicely, Maya," Chef Beaumont commented during my final week. "Your technical foundation from Maison is evident, but you've developed more creative flexibility here." "Thank you, Chef. I've learned a tremendous amount from your approach." "Renard builds excellent technicians," he observed with professional respect. "I like to think I helped them become artists." He reviewed the special I'd developed for that evening's service, a duck preparation featuring unexpected spice elements, inspired by Moroccan cuisine. "Victoria was right about your potential. You have both the technical precision and creative sensibility that suggests Michelin capability." The casual reference to Michelin recognition, the restaurant industry's highest standard, both thrilled and terrified me. Chef Beaumont spoke of it not as an impossible dream, but as a realistic trajectory for my development. As scheduled in Victoria's accelerated timeline, I transitioned to Aria after my 6 months at L'Étoile. The position of executive sous chef represented another significant advancement, second in command of the entire kitchen, responsible for managing station chefs and ensuring Chef Reynolds's culinary vision was executed perfectly. "Your background is somewhat unusual," Chef Reynolds noted during our initial meeting. "Accelerated progression through prestigious kitchens rather than extended tenure in fewer locations. But Victoria vouches for your capabilities, and that carries significant weight." The leadership role at Aria demanded an entirely different skill set, beyond pure culinary technique. Now, I was responsible not just for my own cooking, but for coaching and developing other chefs, managing kitchen logistics, and contributing to menu development while maintaining Chef Reynolds' exacting standards. Throughout these professional transitions, my unusual relationship with David continued to evolve. Our Sunday dinners became a grounding ritual amid my constantly changing work demands. Sometimes we dined out, exploring Chicago's diverse restaurant scene with increasingly analytical perspective. Other times I cooked, using my limited free time to test concepts that might eventually appear on my own restaurant's menu. "I think this could be a signature dish," David commented one Sunday, sampling a contemporary interpretation of cassoulet I'd been developing. "It honors the traditional comfort aspect, while elevating through technique. Very much your culinary perspective." I was continually surprised by how his understanding of my cooking had developed. Where once he had casually dismissed my efforts, he now offered thoughtful analysis that actually contributed to my creative process. Similarly, I found myself genuinely interested in his evolving consulting business, which had begun specializing in culinary and hospitality clients. His marketing perspective often provided valuable insights into restaurant industry dynamics I was still learning to navigate. "The space between fine dining and casual concepts is where the most interesting growth is happening," he explained during one of our discussions. "Elevated food with less formal service models, expanding accessibility without compromising culinary integrity." "That aligns with my vision for renovation," I acknowledged, having officially adopted the name he'd suggested months earlier. Michelin-worthy cuisine in a more approachable atmosphere. 3 months into my position at Aria, Victoria scheduled a formal development meeting for renovation. The property renovation would begin in 8 weeks, requiring finalized design, concepts, and preliminary operational planning. "I'd like David to join us," I told Victoria during our preliminary conversation. "His marketing perspective would be valuable for the brand positioning discussion." She raised an eyebrow slightly. "Of course. And how is that arrangement proceeding? Both professional and personal aspects?" Victoria's perception was characteristically astute. While we'd been transparent about David's investment structure, we'd been more circumspect about our evolving personal relationship. "Both aspects are progressing. Positively," I replied carefully. "We've established effective professional boundaries while exploring personal reconnection separately." "Good." She nodded approvingly. "Maintaining that separation will be essential as renovation develops." The industry respects clear lines between business and personal relationships. Find every aspect of renovation's identity, from physical design to service approach to brand positioning. The space will honor the building's industrial heritage while incorporating refined elements that reflect the culinary approach. The architect explained, presenting renderings that perfectly captured my vision. An open kitchen design allows guests to observe the technical precision that defines Chef Winter's cooking. Menu concept features classical French foundations reinterpreted through contemporary technique and global influences, Victoria summarized. From my culinary brief. Price point accessible for regular dining while maintaining standards appropriate for fine cuisine recognition. Marketing strategy positions. Renovation as the evolution of fine dining. Technical excellence without pretension, David added. Professional and focused despite the personal connection. Emphasizing Chef Winter's unique perspective as someone who came to professional cooking through genuine passion rather than traditional paths. As the meeting concluded, I found myself momentarily overwhelmed by the reality taking shape around me. In just 15 months, renovation would open its doors. My culinary vision manifested in physical space, menu, and experience. From that casual dismissal of my coq au vin to owning a restaurant on Chicago's prestigious Restaurant Row, the journey seemed both impossibly rapid and entirely natural. After the other participants departed, David remained behind. "You okay? You looked a bit shell-shocked during those final presentations." "Just processing," I admitted. "Seeing the renderings, hearing the operational timelines, it makes everything suddenly very real." "Intimidating?" "Terrifying," I confessed with a small smile, but in the best possible way. As construction began on renovation's physical space, my role at Aria intensified. Chef Reynolds entrusted me with increasing responsibility, including development of seasonal menu items and supervision of special events. The experience provided invaluable preparation for eventually running my own kitchen, exposing me to both the creative and managerial demands of restaurant leadership. "Your organization under pressure is impressive," Chef Reynolds noted after a particularly challenging service where we'd managed multiple VIP tables alongside a full reservation book. "Many talented chefs fall apart when business complexities intersect with culinary demands." His observation highlighted an unexpected advantage of my previous corporate career: the ability to balance creative vision with practical execution, artistic ambition with operational realities. Where some chefs struggled with management responsibilities, my background had prepared me to handle both culinary and business aspects of restaurant operation. Meanwhile, the renovation of our West Loop space progressed steadily. Weekly site visits became part of my routine, each revealing incremental transformation of the raw industrial shell into the restaurant I'd envisioned. The kitchen installation particularly fascinated me. Custom equipment arranged precisely according to the workflow I designed, creating an efficient environment for executing my culinary vision. "The sightlines are perfect," I observed during one visit, standing at what would become the central cooking station. "I can monitor every aspect of service from this position." The architect nodded approvingly. That was a key consideration in the layout, maintaining your connection to both kitchen operations and dining room experience. David joined me for many of these site visits, his marketing perspective complementing my culinary focus. Together, we refined countless details that would shape the guest experience. Lighting that properly highlighted plating presentations, acoustics that balanced conversational comfort with energetic atmosphere, service pathways that ensured optimal food delivery timing. "The brand identity is really taking shape," he remarked during one such visit, surveying the partially completed dining room. "You can feel renovation's character emerging even with the construction still underway." His observation captured something I'd been feeling but couldn't articulate. The restaurant was developing a distinct personality that extended beyond my individual vision, becoming an entity with its own identity and presence. 6 months before our scheduled opening, Victoria arranged a crucial meeting with potential key staff members, the management team that would help translate my culinary concept into operational reality. Building the right team is as important as creating the right menu, she advised. Particularly for your first restaurant, you need people who understand and believe in your vision while bringing their own expertise to complement yours. The candidates she'd selected impressed me immediately. A general manager with fine dining experience tempered by approachable personality, a beverage director whose wine knowledge complemented my food philosophy, a pastry chef whose technical precision matched my own while bringing distinct creative perspective. We would structure their compensation to include performance incentives and potential equity stakes after proven commitment, Victoria explained, creating mutual investment in renovation's success. Throughout the interview process, I found myself drawing on both my culinary training and previous corporate experience, assessing technical qualifications while evaluating interpersonal dynamics and leadership potential. By day's end, we'd assembled a preliminary leadership team that balanced expertise with personality compatibility. They all seemed to genuinely connect with your vision, David observed afterward. Particularly Thomas, for GM. He articulated the concept almost as clearly as you do. That's essential, I agreed. The front-of-house team needs to communicate our philosophy to guests as effectively as the food itself expresses it. With construction progressing and key staff identified, my focus shifted to finalizing renovation's opening menu. Each dish needed to perfectly embody my culinary perspective. Technical precision applied to familiar flavors, creating dining experiences that were simultaneously comforting and surprising. During my limited free time, primarily those sacred Sunday evenings, I tested potential menu items, using David as my primary taster. His palate had developed remarkably over the months, providing increasingly valuable feedback on flavor balance and presentation impact. "The duck preparation is exceptional," he commented during one such tasting session in my apartment. "The sauce has incredible depth, and that crispy skin texture against the medium-rare meat creates perfect contrast. It's perfect." "But," I prompted, hearing the hesitation in his assessment. "The plating feels slightly disconnected from the flavor profile," he suggested carefully. "The geometric presentation doesn't quite match the rustic, deeply satisfying taste experience." I considered his observation, recognizing its validity. "You're right. It's too architectural, too precise for a dish that's fundamentally about comfort elevated through technique." This exchange typified our evolved relationship. Honest communication balanced with mutual respect, critical assessment offered and received constructively. Where once David had casually dismissed my cooking wholesale, he now engaged thoughtfully with specific elements, providing perspective that genuinely enhanced my work. Our personal relationship had similarly evolved beyond the initial dating framework into something more substantive. Physical affection had gradually returned to our interactions. A touch while tasting a dish, a lingering hug at evening's end, and eventually, 3 months before renovation's opening, a genuine kiss goodnight that acknowledged the rekindled connection between us. Yet we maintained our separate residences and independent lives, both recognizing that renovation's launch would demand my complete focus and energy. Any major relationship decisions remained deliberately tabled until after the restaurant was successfully established. With 3 months remaining before opening, I transitioned from aria to full-time focus on renovation. The timing aligned with the kitchen installation completion, allowing me to establish systems and train staff in the actual space where we would operate. My first priority was assembling the complete kitchen team, the line cooks, prep cooks, and dishwashers who would form the backbone of daily operations. Unlike many chef owners who hired primarily from their professional networks, I implemented a unique approach to staffing. "I'd like to reserve 3 line cook positions for culinary school career changers," I explained to Thomas, our GM. "People who came to cooking later, as a second profession." Interesting strategy, he remarked. Any particular reason? They bring different perspectives and life experience, I explained. Often greater appreciation for the opportunity and stronger work ethic. I want that balance alongside traditionally trained cooks. Victoria supported this unconventional approach, recognizing it reflected my own journey. The resulting kitchen team blended diverse backgrounds, classically trained chefs from prestigious restaurants, alongside career changers bringing unique perspectives from previous professional lives. Menu development entered its final phase as I tested each dish under actual kitchen conditions, refining preparations based on equipment performance and staff capabilities. The constraints of real-world execution occasionally required adjustments to my original concepts, but these limitations often sparked creative solutions that improved the final result. The short rib preparation works better with the overnight, sous vide method, I noted during one test session with my newly appointed sous chef, Elena. The texture is more consistent, and it frees up oven space during service. And we can hold them at precise temperature until order time, she added, immediately grasping the operational advantage. Perfect consistency regardless of service volume. Elena's ability to balance culinary excellence with practical execution made her an invaluable partner during these critical development weeks. Where I occasionally lost myself in perfectionist details, she maintained focus on systems that would support consistent quality under real service conditions. 2 months before opening, we conducted our first mock service, a complete dinner. Experience for Victoria, David, and the Apex operational team. Though the dining room remained partially under construction, the kitchen was fully operational, allowing us to test our menu and service flow under semi-realistic conditions. 6 top test order in, 2 duck, 1 short rib, 2 halibut, 1 vegetable tasting, Thomas called, executing the ordering process exactly as it would function during actual service. The kitchen responded with the choreographed precision we'd been rehearsing, each station contributing components that came together as complete dishes. Timing, temperature, seasoning, presentation. Every element required perfect execution to deliver the consistent excellence that would define renovation. After service, Victoria provided characteristically direct assessment. Flavors are exceptional. Across the board. The duck and short rib are standout signature items. Halibut timing needs refinement. 2 minutes between first and last plate is too long for a 6-top service. These detailed critiques continued through multiple mock services, each addressing specific improvements until we achieved the consistent excellence required. Through it all, I maintained the dual focus essential to restaurant success: obsessive, attention to culinary details balanced with operational practicality. 1 month before opening, marketing activities intensified. David coordinated a strategic publicity campaign that built anticipation without creating impossible expectations, a delicate balance in Chicago's competitive restaurant scene. We're positioning renovation as the natural evolution of fine dining, he explained during our marketing review. Technical excellence and extraordinary flavors in an approachable, unpretentious setting. Your personal journey as a career changer who followed genuine passion supports this narrative perfectly. The resulting press coverage emphasized this authentic story. Profiles focused on my unconventional path from marketing executive to chef owner, the transformative journey sparked by a desire to elevate home cooking to professional standards. Food writers expressed particular interest in the restaurant's name origin. Renovation represents both renovation of classic techniques and personal renovation through following authentic passion, I explained in one interview, carefully avoiding mention of the specific incident with David that had catalyzed my journey. It's about honoring foundations while creating something new and personal. It's really happening, I murmured during a quiet moment alone in the space, surveying what we'd created. After nearly 2 years of intensive preparation, culinary training, professional kitchen experience, concept development, and construction, renovation stood ready to welcome its first actual guests. The night before our friends and family service, the traditional soft opening before official debut, David suggested a quiet dinner at my apartment rather than going out. "You need a moment of calm before the whirlwind begins," he observed wisely. "And I have something I'd like to give you." I prepared a simple meal, deliberately different from Renovation's menu. Comfort food without chefy embellishments, allowing us both to relax outside the restaurant context that had dominated our interactions for months. After dinner, David presented a small, elegantly wrapped package. A restaurant opening gift, traditional but personal. Inside, I found a chef's knife of exceptional quality, hand-forged Japanese steel with a custom handle in the deep blue color that dominated Renovation's color palette. "Turn it over," he suggested quietly. Engraved on the blade in delicate script was a single word: transformation. "For everything this journey has represented," he explained. "For the dishes and life you've transformed through your extraordinary dedication." The emotion that overwhelmed me was unexpected in its intensity. This thoughtful gift acknowledged not just my professional achievement, but the profound personal journey that had brought me to this moment. A journey that began with hurt and rejection but had evolved into something empowering and authentic. "It's perfect," I managed, running my finger along the engraving. "Thank you for understanding what this all means." "I should be thanking you," David replied softly. "Your transformation challenged me to examine my own life, to question assumptions, and patterns I never would have recognized otherwise." We shared a moment of quiet acknowledgement, how far we'd both come from that fateful evening when he'd suggested ordering pizza instead of eating my coq au vin. Whatever happens with Renovation, with us, I'm grateful for the catalyst, I admitted. Even the painful parts served a purpose in this journey. He nodded, understanding the complex truth in my statement. "Get some rest tonight. Tomorrow begins the realization of everything you've worked toward." The friends and family service the next evening provided final crucial preparation before our public opening. The guest list included industry connections, early supporters, and personal friends, people who understood the soft opening concept and would provide constructive feedback while tolerating minor service adjustments. I arrived hours before service to oversee final preparations, directing my team with the focused calm I'd developed through professional kitchen experience. Each station received meticulous attention, mise en place verified, temperatures checked, plating elements prepared, systems confirmed. "Family meal in 30 minutes, I announced, maintaining the professional tradition of feeding staff before service. Then final lineup at 5. First guests arrive at 6. The pre-service meal served multiple purposes, ensuring staff were properly fed before the demanding shift ahead, building team cohesion through shared experience, and providing one final opportunity to review service procedures and menu details. Tonight represents the culmination of extraordinary effort from everyone in this room. I addressed the assembled team during lineup. But it also marks the beginning of what we'll create together moving forward. Every guest experience starts with your commitment to excellence, to supporting each other, to embodying Renovation's vision in every detail. As 6 o'clock approached, I took a final moment in my office, a small space adjacent to the kitchen where I could briefly retreat when necessary. On the desk sat a framed photograph Layla had given me that morning, me at age 12 in our family kitchen, proudly presenting my first attempt at a soufflé, eyes shining with the pure joy of creating something delicious. "To remind you why you started cooking in the first place," her note read, "before careers and marriages and restaurants, just the simple joy of feeding people." The image centered me perfectly for the evening ahead, connecting the acclaimed chef owner I'd become with the girl who had discovered her passion in a home kitchen many years earlier. Service began precisely at 6, with Victoria and the Apex team among the first arrivals. I worked the pass position, the critical junction between kitchen and dining room where I could inspect every plate while coordinating timing between stations. From this central command position, I orchestrated the culinary experience, ensuring each dish met my exacting standards before proceeding to guests. 2 duck, 1 short rib, 3 scallops, table 9, Thomas called, the ordering system functioning smoothly from the first ticket. Oui, chef, my line responded in unison, the traditional kitchen acknowledgement reflecting both respect and confirmation. Throughout the evening, I maintained hyper-focused awareness of every detail: plate temperatures, sauce consistency, garnish, placement, timing between courses. When minor issues arose, we adjusted immediately, the team responding with the adaptability we'd practiced during mock services. David arrived with Layla and her husband midway through service, seated at a prominent table with clear visibility of the open kitchen. I acknowledged them briefly during a rare calm moment, but maintained professional distance. Tonight I was Chef Winters first, all personal connections secondary to operational excellence. As service progressed, I observed Thomas circulating through the dining room, gathering feedback while ensuring seamless front-of-house execution. His occasional reports to the pass were encouraging, guests responding enthusiastically to both food and atmosphere, the concept resonating as we'd hoped. Evening's end, we had served 68 guests across 24 tables, a deliberately limited capacity for our first service, allowing attention to detail while testing all operational systems. As the final desserts left the kitchen, a spontaneous applause broke out among the remaining diners, acknowledgement of what we'd accomplished. Following industry tradition, I emerged briefly from the kitchen once service concluded, making a modest circuit of remaining tables to receive direct feedback. The response was overwhelmingly positive, with specific dishes drawing particular praise. The duck preparation emerged as an early signature item, while the reimagined coq au vin garnered knowing appreciation from those familiar with my personal journey. When I reached David's table, Layla immediately enveloped me in an enthusiastic hug. "It's magnificent, Maya. Every single bite told your story. Technical brilliance with soulful understanding of what makes food truly satisfying." The beverage pairings were perfectly calibrated to the flavor progressions, her husband added, with genuine appreciation. The entire experience felt cohesive, intentional. David waited until they had finished before offering his own assessment. "You've created something extraordinary," he said simply. "Not just excellent food, but a complete expression of your culinary perspective. It feels authentically you in every detail." His words carried particular weight given our history. Acknowledgement not just of technical execution, but of the personal vision underlying everything renovation represented. After the last guest departed, I gathered my team for a brief post-service debrief, acknowledging successes while identifying specific improvements for our official opening the following evening. Their faces showed the familiar mixture of exhaustion and satisfaction that defines successful restaurant service, along with the particular pride of launching something new and meaningful. "Get some rest," I concluded. "Tomorrow we do it for real." Renovation's official opening night arrived with heightened intensity, but greater confidence after our successful friends and family service. Minor adjustments had been implemented, timing between courses tightened, plating details refined, service flow improved, creating a more seamless experience for our first paying guests. The reservation book had filled immediately upon opening, a combination of industry interest, Victoria's strategic connections, and the pre-opening press coverage David had orchestrated. Every table would be occupied, with staggered seating times to manage kitchen flow. "Full book, chef," Thomas confirmed during pre-service lineup. "Including critics from the Tribune and Chicago Magazine at tables 12 and 20? I acknowledged, this information without allowing it to create additional pressure. We cook the same for every guest. Consistent excellence regardless of who's at the table. Service began with the practiced precision we'd established during training. From my position at the pass, I maintained control of every dish, ensuring each component met my exacting standards before proceeding to guests. The kitchen operated with focused intensity, communication minimal but effective, movements efficient, teamwork seamless. "Fire table 9, 2 duck, 1 short rib," I called, maintaining the rhythmic flow of service. "Table 7 appetizers need runners now." Throughout the evening, I observed our concept successfully translating from abstract vision to tangible reality. Servers articulated our culinary philosophy with genuine understanding. Guests responded to dishes with visible appreciation. The restaurant itself, from lighting to acoustics to service pacing, created precisely the experience I'd envisioned. Technical excellence without pretension, refined comfort without stuffiness. As the final desserts left the kitchen and service wound down, Thomas approached the pass with measured excitement. "Chef, the response has been exceptional. Multiple guests have asked to personally compliment you." Following fine dining tradition, I circulated briefly through the dining room once. Immediate kitchen responsibilities were complete. The direct feedback was gratifying. Genuine appreciation for specific dishes, understanding of our concept, enthusiasm for what we'd created. The Tribune critic, whom I recognized despite her attempt at anonymity, offered particularly meaningful comments. "The technical precision is evident in every dish, but what truly distinguishes Renovation is the soul behind the execution. Each plate tells a story of transformation, familiar elements elevated through skill and vision." After the final guests departed and closing procedures were complete, I gathered my team for a brief celebration, champagne and simple gratitude for executing our opening service with remarkable success. "This is just the beginning," I reminded them. "Consistency defines great restaurants, not single exceptional evenings. But tonight, you've proven what we're capable of creating together." The following weeks established Renovation's reputation exactly as we'd hoped. Early reviews praised both technical execution and conceptual integrity. Reservations remained consistently full. Industry recognition came swiftly, with inclusion in several Best New Restaurant features. Most gratifying was the diverse clientele we attracted, serious food enthusiasts alongside casual diners seeking special experiences, industry professionals alongside neighborhood regulars. Our vision of elevating fine dining while increasing accessibility seemed to resonate precisely as intended. David's marketing support proved invaluable during this critical establishment phase. His strategic approach emphasized our core identity, while avoiding trendy overexposure that might undermine long-term reputation. Particularly effective was the content strategy he developed. Behind-the-scenes glimpses into our culinary process, shared through carefully curated social media, building connection with guests beyond their in-restaurant experience. The engagement. "Metrics are exceptional," he noted during one of our weekly marketing reviews. "Particularly the response to your personal culinary journey narrative. People connect with the authenticity of your transformation from corporate career to professional chef." 3 months after opening, the first major validation arrived. Renovation was named to Chicago Magazine's annual Best New Restaurants list, with specific praise for my technically brilliant yet soulfully satisfying cuisine and clear, confident culinary voice. To celebrate this milestone, David suggested dinner at Alinea, Chicago's most acclaimed restaurant, holder of 3 Michelin stars and global reputation for culinary innovation. "You've been so immersed in your own kitchen, you deserve to experience someone else's vision for an evening," he reasoned. Professional research disguised as celebration. The experience proved both inspiring and affirming. While Chef Achatz's molecular gastronomy represented a dramatically different approach from my classically rooted cuisine, I recognized the shared commitment to technical precision and emotional connection through food. "What did you think?" David asked as we left, knowing I'd been analyzing every aspect of the experience through a chef's perspective. "Extraordinary technical innovation," I acknowledged. But what impressed me most was how the theatrical elements never overshadowed flavor fundamentals. Every dramatic presentation ultimately served the taste experience. Unlike some modernist restaurants where technique becomes the end itself, he observed, demonstrating his evolved culinary understanding. Exactly. I felt a rush of appreciation for how completely he now engaged with my professional world. Though my approach is different, I share that commitment to technique serving flavor rather than vice versa. As we walked along the Chicago riverfront afterward, David took my hand, a gesture that had become natural again in recent months. "I'm incredibly proud of what you've created with renovation," he said quietly. "Not just the critical success, but how fully it expresses your unique culinary perspective. I couldn't have done it without your support," I admitted, "both financial and personal." He stopped walking, turning to face me directly. "Maya, there's something I've been wanting to discuss, but I've been waiting until renovation was established." The seriousness in his tone made my heart skip. "What is it?" "Our marriage." His expression was earnest but calm. "We've been in this undefined state for almost 2 years now. Technically married, but functionally separated for most of that time. Then cautiously reconnecting while focusing on renovation's development." "That's true," I acknowledged, having been too consumed with the restaurant to properly address our personal situation. "With the restaurant successfully established, I think it's time we make a conscious decision about our future." He squeezed my hand gently. "Not defaulting into a pattern through inertia, but actively choosing a path forward." The wisdom in his approach struck me immediately. Throughout our separation and tentative reconnection, we'd both been evolving, developing new capabilities, perspectives, and priorities. Any decision about our relationship needed to reflect who we had become, not who we had been. "I agree," I said finally. "We should address this directly." David nodded, seeming relieved by my receptiveness. "I have a suggestion, if you're open to it." "I'm listening." "Let's take a weekend away from Chicago. Away from renovation, away from my consulting work, away from the patterns we've established here. Somewhere quiet where we can talk without distractions or interruptions." The proposal made perfect sense. Despite our regular Sunday dinners and gradually rekindled connection, most of our interactions remained contextualized by professional responsibilities. My restaurant, his consulting business, our investment partnership. A neutral environment would allow clearer perspective on the personal relationship itself. "That seems wise," I agreed. "When were you thinking?" 2 weeks from now? I know Thomas is capable of handling a weekend service without you, and Elena has demonstrated her ability to maintain your culinary standards." He was right. I'd built a kitchen team specifically capable of executing my vision consistently, even in my absence. While I hadn't yet taken any time away from renovation since opening, the systems were now established enough to function smoothly for a short period. "I'll arrange it with Thomas and Elena," I decided. "They should be prepared to handle the responsibility eventually anyway." Over the next 2 weeks, I methodically prepared my team for my first absence, reviewing procedures, conducting additional training where needed, clearly establishing decision parameters. Elena, my sous chef, had proven herself exceptionally capable of maintaining my standards, while Thomas managed front-of-house operations with consistent excellence. "I'll have my phone if any true emergencies arise," I instructed during our final pre-weekend meeting. "But part of your professional development is learning to handle situations independently. I trust you to maintain renovation standards," David had arranged a small cabin in Michigan's wine country, distant enough from Chicago to feel like a genuine escape, but close enough for a reasonable drive. The setting offered both privacy for our important conversations and natural beauty for relaxation between them. As we drove away from the city, I felt tension gradually releasing from my shoulders, the constant vigilance of chef ownership temporarily suspended. Regardless of what decisions we reached about our marriage, this brief respite from professional responsibilities was clearly needed. The cabin proved perfect for our purposes. comfortably appointed but simple, with a well-equipped kitchen, fireplace, and porch overlooking woodland views. No television or excessive distractions, just basic comforts and beautiful surroundings. How does it feel to be cooking without an audience or critics? David asked, as I prepared a simple dinner from local ingredients we'd gathered at farm stands. During our drive, liberating, I admitted, realizing how rarely I cooked purely for pleasure since opening renovation. No tweezers, no precise plating, no service considerations, just good ingredients treated respectfully. We spent that first evening reacclimating to each other's company without professional contexts, talking about books we'd read, music we'd enjoyed, experiences beyond our work lives. The conversation flowed with surprising ease, revealing how much of our fundamental connection remained intact despite our complicated journey. The following morning, after breakfast on the porch with coffee and local pastries, David broached the central question of our weekend. I think we should talk about what we each want from our relationship going forward, he suggested. Not what we think we should want or what would be practical, but what we genuinely desire. His framing reflected how significantly he'd evolved, prioritizing authentic desires over pragmatic considerations, a dramatic shift from his formerly rigid approach to decision-making. That seems like the right place to start, I agreed. Would you like to share your thoughts first? Al, I know Thomas is capable of handling a weekend service without you, and Elena has demonstrated her ability to maintain your culinary standards. He was right. I'd built a kitchen team specifically capable of executing my vision consistently, even in my absence. While I hadn't yet taken any time away from renovation since opening, the systems were now established enough to function smoothly for a short period. I'll arrange it with Thomas and Elena, I decided. They should be prepared to handle the responsibility eventually anyway. Over the next 2 weeks, I methodically prepared my team for my first absence, reviewing procedures, conducting additional training where needed, clearly establishing decision parameters. Elena, my sous chef, had proven herself exceptionally capable of maintaining my standards, while Thomas managed front-of-house operations with consistent excellence. I'll have my phone if any true emergencies arise, I instructed during our final pre-weekend meeting. But part of your professional development is learning to handle situations independently. I trust you to maintain renovation standards. David had arranged a small cabin in Michigan's wine country, distant enough from Chicago to feel like a genuine escape, but close enough for a reasonable drive. The setting offered both privacy for our important conversations and natural beauty for relaxation between them. As we drove away from the city, I felt tension gradually releasing from my shoulders, the constant vigilance of chef ownership temporarily suspended. Regardless of what decisions we reached about our marriage, this brief respite from professional responsibilities was clearly needed. The cabin proved perfect for our purposes, comfortably appointed but simple, with a well-equipped kitchen, fireplace, and porch overlooking woodland views. No television or excessive distractions, just basic comforts and beautiful surroundings. How does it feel to be cooking without an audience or critics? David asked as I prepared a simple dinner from local ingredients we'd gathered at farm stands during our drive. Liberating, I admitted, realizing how rarely I cooked purely for pleasure since opening renovation. No tweezers, no precise plating, no service considerations, just good ingredients treated respectfully. We spent that first evening reacclimating to each other's company without professional contexts, talking about books we'd read, music we'd enjoyed, experiences beyond our work lives. The conversation flowed with surprising ease, revealing how much of our fundamental connection remained intact despite our complicated journey. The following morning, after breakfast on the porch with coffee and local pastries, David broached the central question of our weekend. I think we should talk about what we each want from our relationship going forward, he suggested. Not what we think we should want or what would be practical, but what we genuinely desire. His framing reflected how significantly he'd evolved, prioritizing authentic desires over pragmatic considerations, a dramatic shift from his formerly rigid approach to decision-making. That seems like the right place to start, I agreed. Would you like to share your thoughts first? He nodded, seeming to appreciate the opportunity to express his perspective. I want to be completely honest with you, Maya. These past 2 years have transformed my understanding of what matters, in life generally, and in relationships specifically. I listened attentively as he continued. I want a partnership where both our passions are equally valued and supported. I want the connection we've rediscovered, but with the mutual respect we've developed during our separation. I want to build something together that honors who we've both become, not who we were when we first married. His words resonated deeply, articulating exactly what had been missing in our original marriage and what had gradually emerged in our evolved relationship. Most directly, he concluded, I want to be your husband again, not as a default status or legal technicality, but as an active choice we both make with clear understanding of what it means now. His direct expression of desire surprised me with its vulnerability and clarity. The David I'd married would have approached such a conversation with practical considerations and logical arguments. This David spoke from genuine emotional understanding, acknowledging what he wanted while leaving space for my potentially different perspective. Thank you for that honesty, I said after absorbing his words. I appreciate how directly you've expressed what you want. And you? He asked quietly. What do you want? Maya? I took a moment to organize my thoughts, determined to match his authenticity with my own. I want a relationship where my passions are recognized as central to my identity, not peripheral hobbies. I began with the core issue that had initiated our separation. I want mutual support that doesn't require sacrifice of either person's dreams. I want the balance we've discovered recently, professional independence alongside personal connection. As I continued articulating my desires, I realized how much clarity I'd gained during our time apart. The painful catalyst of his dismissive comment about my cooking had ultimately led to profound understanding of what I truly needed in a relationship. Most fundamentally, I concluded, I want a partner who sees me completely, my ambitions, my capabilities, my potential, and values all of it, not just the aspects that fit comfortably into his life. David nodded, absorbing my perspective, with thoughtful attention. And do you think I could be that partner now? Not who I was, but who I've become. The question deserved careful consideration. We sat in contemplative silence for several minutes, the woodland around us providing peaceful context for this pivotal conversation. I believe you could, I said finally. You've demonstrated genuine change, not just in supporting my culinary career, but in how you engage with my perspective, how you communicate your own needs, how you balance practical considerations with emotional understanding. Relief and hope mingled in his expression. So, where does that leave us? At a crossroads where we can make a conscious choice, I replied. Not resuming our previous marriage, but potentially creating something new that honors who we've both become. Throughout the remainder of the weekend, we discussed practical implications of potential reconciliation, living arrangements, financial considerations, professional boundaries. These conversations unfolded with remarkable maturity and mutual respect, each of us acknowledging the other's legitimate needs and concerns. By Sunday afternoon, as we prepared to return to Chicago, we had reached a decision that felt authentically right for both of us. To formally reconcile our marriage with clear understanding of what that meant in our evolved context. Not picking up where we left off, as David articulated it, but beginning something new with the wisdom we've gained through separation, and with explicit agreements about supporting each other's professional passions, I added, ensuring this fundamental issue remained central to our understanding. The drive back to Chicago carried a sense of possibility rather than conclusion, the beginning of a consciously chosen path rather than the resolution of a pending problem. We discussed immediate practical steps. David would move into my apartment initially while we searched for a shared home that would accommodate both our needs, including a proper kitchen for my continued culinary development outside the restaurant. Upon returning to renovation that evening to check on weekend service, I found the restaurant operating flawlessly under Thomas and Elena's leadership. The smooth functioning in my absence represented professional success beyond the immediate culinary achievements. I had built not just a restaurant, but a sustainable operation capable of maintaining excellence even when I wasn't personally present. Everything ran perfectly, chef, Thomas reported. Full books both nights, consistent execution, excellent guest feedback. Elena maintained your standards beautifully in the kitchen, added our pastry chef. The team really stepped up to show what they could do. This operational success provided final confirmation that I had truly transformed from amateur home cook to professional chef owner, capable not just of creating exceptional food, but of building systems and teams that consistently delivered my culinary vision. As service wound down and the last guests departed, I found myself alone in renovation's dining room, surveying what had emerged from that pivotal moment 2 years earlier, when David had suggested ordering pizza instead of eating my coq au vin. "Penny for your thoughts?" David asked, joining me after seeing the final guests to the door, a role he occasionally filled when visiting the restaurant. All of this. I gestured to encompass the restaurant around us. My worst moment as a husband, he acknowledged ruefully. And paradoxically, the catalyst for our best possible future. Life rarely follows linear paths, I observed. Who would have predicted that your insulting my cooking would eventually lead to you investing in my restaurant? And to us finding our way back to each other, he added, taking my hand. Through a journey neither of us could have imagined. We stood together in the quiet restaurant, the physical manifestation of my culinary vision, supported by his belief in my talent. Whatever challenges lay ahead in our reconciled marriage, we faced them with profound understanding of both our individual capabilities and our potential as partners. "Ready to go home?" David asked, respecting that I would need a final check of the kitchen before departing. "Almost," I replied. "Just one thing first." I led him to table 7, a special two-top in a discreet corner with perfect sightlines to the open kitchen. On the table was a covered plate I had arranged earlier with the evening's kitchen team. "What's this?" he asked as I removed the cover. To reveal a single, perfect portion of coq au vin, not the modernist reinterpretation featured on Renovation's menu, but the classical version I had been perfecting when he'd made his fateful dismissive comment. "The dish that started everything," I explained. "Executed with all the technique and understanding I've gained since that night. A reminder of how far we've both come." He took a bite, closing his eyes to fully appreciate the flavors. When he looked at me again, his expression held both appreciation and remorse. "Extraordinary," he said simply. "I was a fool to have ever suggested pizza instead."